favorite show. At producer, 5'11" from Blanchester, the cow killer, Casey McCollister. And comic engineer, standing at 4'8", the pride of the West Side, Elliot Rearing. And your host, weighing 150 pounds, soaking wet, from Hamilton, Ohio, Ace Fowler.
All right. Well, welcome into Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. I'm Trace Fowler, joined as always with the usual cast of characters, and we have some things to talk about today. We actually had some sports. I was sitting down last night, gentlemen, and I was watching. I think I had like the little dual box display up there that they give you on the YouTube TV, no free ads.
Yeah.
And I think I was watching an NHL game, an NBA game, and then another NHL game. And I got to be honest, usually when I have the three kind of simultaneous streams going on at once, whether it's just the fact that maybe I have ADHD or there's just too many things that I'm processing at one time, my brain's not able to keep up, I usually turn it off that channel relatively quickly if it comes up. But I had two close games, and I had another game that just started. And I actually probably watched that channel for every bit of 2 straight hours last night. And I thought to myself, sports are awesome.
How about that?
Sports are awesome. Because there was a time, I don't know if you remember back in 2020, where we had literally no sports. And it is funny how in your life, and especially as human beings, you just take things for granted. And I was like, you know what? I was going to sit there and say, there's just so many things going on in the world of sports. And there actually are. So I enjoyed a whole host of things last night. Did you watch anything, Elliot?
I watched the Cincinnati Reds.
That
was my priority. That was what I focused on. I needed to watch them, needed to put all my attention to it. I don't have time for the NBA playoffs right now. I'll tune into that in August or whenever that ends. So we'll do that then. NHL playoffs, same deal, probably around July. We'll start tuning into the NHL postseason. But as of right now, I am trying to will the Cincinnati Reds into a postseason berth in, what month is it? April.
Casey, did you watch any soccer last night through the 14 paywalls you got to get there?
No, I did not. I watched the Cincinnati Reds. That's my main focus right now. I'll watch FC on Saturday.
Fair enough. Is that when they play again?
I'm sure it is.
Wait a minute. You're suggesting to me that you don't know when they play again? And you're supposed to be our FC correspondent?
They play Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, they play Saturday. I don't know.
At
like
7:30.
they have occasionally.
Is it at home, Elliot?
I don't know how they do this again. The bottom team's always the home team, except in soccer when it's the away team. I think they're home.
Gotcha. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm gonna need to. We'll do an early shout out to the Game Time app. We're gonna have to dig up some ticket prices on the Game Time app. Maybe that's what I'll do Saturday.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah. So.
You think you'll do that?
I'll tell you what. If they play at home and the ticket prices are what we'll call reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll go down there and check out a game.
Okay.
As long as and also the last thing, I know I've thrown a lot of asterisks on this because it does need to be the stars have to align, as they say. I need good weather as well. I'm not going down there. I'm not going down there if it's less than 55 degrees. You will not catch me at that game.
Let's get a quick look at the weather on Saturday.
I think it's supposed to be nice.
Very nice. It's not a lot of sun, but low of 59, high of 80.
I'll take that. I'll be at the old what do they call it? The pitch. I'll be at the pitch,
You'll
Casey.
be at the
Do they
pitch.
play at home, Casey?
Yes, they do play at home.
All right. Well, we got to
TQL.
check on ticket prices now. It's the only final remaining straw that will put me down at TQL Stadium. No free ads. Reed,
Hey.
you had quite the day yesterday. I know. I mean, you were running around just trying to cover baseball games that maybe existed,
Hey.
maybe didn't.
Yeah, we're not going to get into that. The Miami Redhawks got back to 500 yesterday. They run-ruled the Xavier Musketeers, so that was exciting. And on top of that, I went home and I watched the Northsiders beat up on the lowly Houston Astros. So that was fun. The Astros struggling. They're on the struggle. They're 2 games behind the Oakland Athletics. They're playing real bad.
That is sad.
Eh.
There's just one team that stands above the rest when it comes to bad baseball right now, and it's the Chicago White Sox.
Boy, do they make it look real easy, too, don't they?
They do.
I mean, have you ever seen a ball club just make losing look any easier?
I mean, I ran down the roster yesterday. It's the saddest display of baseball players I've ever seen. It really is. Last night they had a 2-run lead or a 1-run lead, I think, heading into the 9th inning. Blew it. There's no telling what the White Sox will do next. Every game is hard.
They got to trade their guys, right? And just
they
start
have
it.
to.
Like Luis Robert, Yohan Moncada, like all these guys just got. See you later. Smell you later.
Why would you keep them? Well, I don't even know what the upside of keeping those guys would be.
It's crazy that just 3 years ago, this team looked like they were bound for a dynasty.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone was 23. Like, Luis Robert's still like 26. Like, it's wild. It's wild. And then it's because they got Tony La Russa as their manager.
Shout out to
As
Tony.
everyone knows how you keep a young core together, getting a mid-80s guy with 12 DUIs being your manager. What a show.
Oh.
Yeah, Casey, I just sent you something in your DMs. Another thing, I don't know if you guys got a chance to see, was the St. Louis Cardinals played a baseball game last night in Busch Stadium. Now, we've done this in Cincinnati a whole plethora amount of times, right? Is that you get on the fan base from time to time about how the stadium looks and it appears. In Busch Stadium last night was the emptiest I've ever seen it. Now, if you're on the radio, my apologies. You're not going to be able to see this because that's what happens on the radio. You can't see. But for those that are in the YouTube chat, I've never seen Busch Stadium be this empty personally. And I will say, this is what happens. This is what happens when you lose a lot of baseball games. And now I guess I would parlay that into saying, can you imagine what that looks like if you consecutively do that over 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years in a row? Like, at some point when you're an adult or when you enter your adult life, you do realize that time is limited. Because when you're a child, when you're growing up, you don't have really that thought ever on your mind, right? Like, it's never you're always worried about it later. It'll come later. You have all the time in the world. When you're in elementary school, it feels like you're going to be in elementary for basically at least it did for me, the entirety of your life.
Yeah, I one day I would like to see the Reds Stadium full on a Wednesday night tonight. Tuesday night yesterday. I'd like to see the Red Stadium get back to it, but it is great. It's absolutely beautiful seeing the downfall of the St. Louis Cardinals. I don't know if I'm going to run through it in the headlines whenever you do that, want to do that. But they got destroyed yesterday. I mean, it was humiliating.
When do you think the last time the Cardinals or the Reds outsold the Cardinals in attendance over the course of a year? Because I'm looking at it.
Of course of a year, I don't know if it's ever happened.
I'm looking at it.
Maybe back in the
80s,
70s?
Yeah.
But I don't even know. I don't know.
I'm back 1995.
Okay.
1995 was the last time when the Reds went to the NLCS and the Cardinals, even with hard-hitting Mark Whitten, went 62 and 81.
Well, I hate to say this, but 1995, Elliot, does that ring a bell? Does that ring a bell at all? You always do the bit of telling everybody what happens for the Cincinnati Reds. When was the last time they actually did anything?
That was the last time they won a series.
Somebody actually would tell you that 1995 was the last time the Cincinnati Reds won a playoff series, which is kind of a big deal. And that's my point about the St. Louis Cardinals. It's not so much. And listen, I give all the fans all the credit in the world. I really do. They fill the stadium out. Busch Stadium, the ballpark, the surrounding area. I think they call it Ballpark Village. Fantastic. It really is. It's genuinely fantastic. But I also will say that it's a lot easier to have a great atmosphere. It's a lot easier to fill the stadium up when you have constantly winning, successful baseball teams.
100%.
So if you take the same success that, let's just say, I guess the Marlins, I was going to use an example, but they've won some World Series. Let's just say the Royals or the Reds or the Pirates of the last, 10, 15 years, and you put that in St. Louis, I'd love to see what those attendance numbers look like. And I'm not saying they don't have good fans, but I am saying it's very, very, very beneficial for those fans to be able to show up to the ballpark if their favorite team is something that's actually successful. Yeah. So let's do headlines now. We'll run through those right before we get to the break here on our first segment of 1410 Wing AM.
Boom. Recap of last night. If you missed the Reds game, here's that. The Reds win 8-1. They snapped the 7-game winning streak of the Phillies. It was the longest in Major League Baseball. Andrew Abbott went 4 1/3, gave up 2 hits and 1 earned run. Fernando Cruz came in to relieve him, got out of the jam. Big 2 outs by him. Farmer, Pagan, and Moll carried them home the rest of the way. 3 hits for Christian Encarnacion Strand, including 2 RBIs and a double. So maybe this is the start of CES resurgence. Elly De La Cruz had a walk and a massive home run, as everybody saw. Shout out to Caleb 513. He caught the home run. Santiago Espinal He had 3 hits last night, including a home run. I think he had 5 coming into the game. He added 3 last night, including that big home run. Nick Lodolo, he will square off against Spencer Turnbull. Lodolo has a sub-1 ERA. Turnbull has a 1.23 ERA. I will be at hand at this game. My first game in a little bit. I will be in diamond seats. Shout out to me.
Wow.
Around the league, we have the Giants. They beat the Mets 5-1. Mets have started to cool off a little bit the past couple of games. The Angels, they end their 5-game losing streak, winning 7-4 over the Orioles. Mike Trout hit his first leadoff home run since 2012. Jackson Holiday for the Orioles is 2 for 34 since coming up. And I saw something where Jackson Holiday is really struggling confidence-wise, I think. It was a full count the other day I saw. It was a full count in the final pitch, which he struck out on, right down the middle, didn't swing at it. So Jackson Holiday struggling in the majors. Rockies, they came back to beat the Padres last night, 7-4 at their little fun park in Colorado. Mariners shut out the Rangers 4-0. Diamondbacks, this is what we were talking about last night. They destroyed the St. Louis Cardinals 14-1. The Royals, they came back to beat the Blue Jays 3-2. I mentioned it earlier, but the White Sox, they blew a 9th inning lead to the Twins, and they lose 6-5 yet again. They've got 3 wins on the year. At least they didn't get shut out. 8 shutouts in 23 games. The Cubs, as Reed said, 7-17 Astros is the team they beat. They won 7-2. They beat a little cupcake.
Cody Bellinger left the game hurt.
Did he?
Now I got an excuse like Reds fans.
There you go. Is he young? Is he a little baby boy?
He's still. I think he's younger than Stuart Fairchild.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Is that real?
Yeah.
The Dodgers, they beat up on the Nationals 4-1, and Shohei Ohtani, he had a 118-mile-per-hour home run. Shout out to the Dodgers.
Did it count for more?
Huh? No, it doesn't count for more. They'd make you think it does, though. Pirates, they beat the Brewers 2-1 in a low-scoring affair last night as well. So Pirates, after their 7-game losing streak, appear to be getting hot. NBA, the Timberwolves, they take a 2-0 series lead over the Suns. Jaden McDaniels led the way for the Wolves with 25 points, adding 8 boards. Conley and Gobert each had 18. The Pacers, they evened up the series at 1 apiece. They beat the Bucks last night 125-108. Pascal Siakam dropped 37 points en route to the victory. Lillard tried his hardest, scoring 34 points. And Brook Lopez, their center, went 6 for 7 from beyond the arc. Still waiting for Giannis to come back, if he ever does come back. The Mavericks, they split their series last night 1 apiece. They beat the Clippers 96-93. Kawhi scored 15 points in his return to action. Luka Doncic scored 32 points, adding 6 boards and 9 assists. Go Luka, go. And around the league, we have Greg Norman. He confirmed that Liv never made an offer to Rory McIlroy. He did say he presented an offer to a top PGA Tour player. He wouldn't say which one, though. He wouldn't say which one. And finally, Reggie Bush is getting his 2005 Heisman Trophy back. There will be a formal reinstatement of the trophy coming at some point today. This being in large part, obviously, because of the NIL and everything, the changing landscape in college athletics.
Yeah. There's really, as we go to break here on our first rendition of 1410 Winning AM, is if you're Live Golf, and we're not going to do a segment today on Live Golf, but if you're Live Golf, there's only one guy that you might as well go after, and if you can't get him, then you just, what are we doing, you know? And that is Scotty Scheffler. Like,
could you imagine if they did get him?
Could you imagine? I was just thinking of that. The absolute carnage that would go on in the golf world if Scotty Scheffler just walked away and decided he was going to go to Live. It would legitimately, that would be, of all things that I could think of, that would be the turning point for Liv. That would be the one. I don't really know if you could, unless they decide to do the opposite. Liv Golf could do the opposite, which is go after some amateurs. I mentioned the Miles Russell kid, 15 years old, breaking all these Tiger records, literally finishing top 25 in a basically a AAA event of golf, if you want to take it like baseball terms.
Yeah.
Maybe they go after those guys, and eventually they just have all the best players because they just siphoned off all the amateurs. But Scotty Scheffler, if you don't get him, then you're really just wasting your time because it's his world, and we're just living in it in the golf world. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about Elly De La Cruz.
Oh!
His extension. Would you do it or would you not? How much is it going to take? That and more on 1410 Wing AM right after this. All right, we are back on your home for sports talk in the Miami Valley, 1410 Wing AM, ESPN Radio. Kenner and Kev, they will be on next. Some programming notes. I think for those that are looking for Kenner and Kev on Friday, a little nugget here. I believe Kenner is obviously Justin. He's gonna come down to the studio.
Look at
He's gonna
that.
come down to the studio. So he's
How
gonna
about
do
that?
the show out of our humble abode here. Which again, my favorite thing at Chatterbox sometimes is that we think, I guess, at least I think, I don't want to speak for everybody, that what we do is relatively marginal, right? We have a small little place. We got this, that, and the other. But some people do walk into our studio. And I say most. I say some. I should say most. They walk into our studio, and it's like you'd have thought we were in the middle of Hollywood. No?
They see, and shout out to Casey's dad because he made this big set.
Right.
And the set looks phenomenal. The set looks absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
So that's what they're seeing.
Yeah. Could be the skyline behind you guys as well.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Look at this. Look at the buildings.
They're just so pretty.
You were close to pointing at him. You
were really close. Yeah, I think you were pointing to the moon right there, but that's here nor there.
Wait, where is it? Bring it back.
Yeah.
Some would say this is fantastic radio.
Great radio.
For those that are wondering what's going on right now, well, on the YouTube channel you can find out. There's video of Elliot trying to point at buildings that may or may not exist.
No,
All
they
right.
don't.
Moving forward here, Elly De La Cruz, right? He had an unbelievable game last night. He's basically had an unbelievable past 20 days, and he finds himself now in a position where he's without question the best player on the Cincinnati Reds. And it's not hard to see the ceiling that this kid has. You watch just maybe 2, 3, 4 baseball games of the Cincinnati Reds, he's going to do something within that time frame that makes you think, I'm not sure how many people can actually do that. Because his athleticism is a gift from God. And I know some people say that like haphazardly from time to time, and it's something that's used all the time. Oh, that's a God-given ability, God-given this. And genuinely, you can't teach what he has. You can't do it. There's nothing that you could possibly do to be able to become the athlete that Elly De La Cruz currently is. The question is how polished of a baseball player will he become? He certainly looks like right now he's on a trajectory to become one of the better players in this league. Now, I know Reed kind of makes fun of us from time to time when we say he could end up being the best player on planet Earth, and that is a little maybe a stretch. However, I will say that this is the first time that the Reds have had a young prospect, at least in my lifetime, that I can say, and I know people say, well, Joey, I love Joey Votto, but there's nothing this kid can't do. This is the first time I've seen a prospect play for the Reds, and in my lifetime that I genuinely think they could be, without question, hands down, the best player in the league on a year-in, year-out basis. Now, I know that Reed's going to pipe in here, and he's going to say that the Shohei Ohtani does exist, and certainly so. Certainly so.
But he might not be allowed to play baseball soon.
Well, we shall find out. Now, the good news is for Ohtani, that's a reasonable discussion for another day of whether or not, $14 million shows up missing in your bank account, and you randomly just didn't know about it. Seems like a wild thing.
Dodgers money line was free.
Who knows?
Dodgers money line was free.
Who
Back
knows?
to your point.
Yeah, it's a good point. All right, let's get into it. We'll have a roundtable discussion about this because here's my thing with Elly De La Cruz right now. We talk about, and we'll segue into this in just a bit, about April overreactions. We've done this from time to time. I've gotten accused of it. Obviously, Nick Kirby lets us know about our overreactions from time to time. Last year, perhaps he missed. He swung and missed. Although I went back and I was looking for a clip of Nick Kirby talking about Will Myers and how he was going to have a higher OPS than Spencer Steer. That didn't work out.
Nick Kirby was taking victory laps last night because of Santiago Espinal hitting a home run, and he was saying that, see, I told you. Look what Santiago Espinal did. He's still hitting 170. Listen, everybody in this fandom, and Reed did a whole segment on it yesterday. It was actually a pretty good segment. That the Reds fan base cannibalizes themselves. It's what happens. Every fan, it's a I'm right, you're wrong. You're wrong, I'm right. That's how it goes with this fan base. So whether it's Elly, whether it's Santiago Espinal, Will Myers, doesn't matter. This fan base is going to have some sort of overreaction after every single game that is played. There is not one game that's been played this season where one side of the fan base didn't say, Ha, I told you. I did it with Jonathan India after game 2.
Yep.
Nick Kirby did it last night with Santiago Espinal after a home run. Half the fans do it with Elly every time he makes a spectacular catch, which, again, by the way, he covers 110 feet of ground at his position, which is preposterous a little bit. So shout out to Elly De La Cruz. But after every single night, there's some overreaction about some player that somebody was right about. And that's what it is. Now, regarding your topic, Elly De La Cruz, should he be extended? Will he be extended similarly to Hunter Green? The answer is yes. The Braves have done it, and the Braves are, if not the best baseball team in professional sports right now. They're one of them. They're one of them.
It's easy to sit up here and say that, yeah, let's extend Elly De La Cruz. Let's extend Elly De La Cruz because there's no repercussions on the back end right now of saying that. And that's the concern I have. When you have foresight and you can think about the future and you got to actually logistically map out what you want your ball club to look like, it becomes a lot harder to say that you don't want to extend Elly De La Cruz. And the reason is because if you say that out loud, there are going to be people that think that you're a hater. It has nothing to do with hate. It has everything to do with realistic expectations and what it will ultimately become on the back end of a contract or what it looks like. That's my fear. And I know this. Every single time anybody does anything good in a Reds uniform, boy, oh boy, do we need to extend him. We did it with Scooter Gennett. We did it with Todd Frazier. We did it with Jay Bruce. We did it with Joey Votto, and they signed Joey Votto, and that was great. He had a great career. I'm not taking anything away from Joey Votto's career. But the one thing on the back half of his contract that I kept hearing was, well, you know, we paid Joey Votto, so we can't do X, Y, and Z. And you know what? Maybe that's, again, I'm not saying that doesn't mean that those guys don't earn that money. Joey Votto outplayed his contract. If you think that was a reason as to why the Reds weren't successful, then I would just say take a reassessment of all the things that happened, and maybe we can place the blame on somebody else. So Joey Votto, to be fair, and to be very clear, I'm not suggesting for 1 iota or 1 second that he had any issues as to why the Reds weren't able to win when they signed him. But what I will say is that we can't continue to just be like, oh, well, let's just pay him whatever, and then sit there and tell me that I'm overreacting when I think Espinal should probably have a maybe, just maybe, be considered for somebody else replacing him when he has a 40 OPS, and I get it, he's only had 50 at-bats. That's fine. But at the end of the season, when we're sitting here and we're discussing, oh, it's a two-game race, it's a one-game race, the separation between making the playoffs and not making the playoffs is going to be, more than likely for this Reds team, is going to be between 1 and 4 games. So yeah, I do want to try to put our best foot forward. And right now, I get the Reds are very thin. But if we can't overreact about just small deals, then why can we overreact about some major deal? Like, Elly De La Cruz has been playing fantastic, phenomenal. But if we want to extend him for the amount of money that we're talking, and we're not talking small chump change here, do I think it's possible to extend Elly? I think it is. I'll give you a couple reasons here in just a moment as to why I think that is. But I will say, if we don't want to extend Elly at the end of last season, and we didn't want to extend, and maybe there's folks that did. There's people beating the drum. Maybe they were doing it. They just were doing it in the closet because they didn't want anyone else to hear him. But if you didn't want to extend him at the end of last season when you seen what he was capable of doing, and you didn't want to extend him after he struggled to begin this season off, and by struggled, I put that in quotations. I'm not saying that he was terrible because he wasn't. But if you didn't want to extend him after Philadelphia Phillies series, then how can you sit here and scream to the moon and say, oh, let's extend him now? We're overreacting, if anything. And you know what I'll say is this. If it's a team-friendly and or looks to be a fair deal, by all accounts, go for it. The only thing that I do know for an absolute fact is that the Reds front office and the Reds ownership group, they're going to have some type of intel on what the Major League Baseball financial situation looks like in 5, 10, 15 years. And maybe you can't forecast that perfectly, but that has to be a part of the equation. I have a strong and or hard belief that you can sit there and suggest to me that the financial future of Major League Baseball for the Reds specifically looks unbelievable when you have basically a broadcast company that they get a lot of money from right now. I get it. They're hanging around because they have a good deal with the Reds, but you don't know what that future looks like. You've not had a whole lot of success at the box office until relatively recently. Again, last year, I'm not sitting here trying to crush the fan base by any stretch of the imagination, but there were 8,000 fans in September when the Reds were right in the middle of a pennant race. So we're just going to ho-hum. Let's sign a 22-year-old to a $300-something million guaranteed contract, and we're just going to assume it'll 100% work out. I can't buy into that. I love Elly De La Cruz. I think he's fantastic. But I've also loved and bought into this idea that you have team control of some guys. And you're allowed to see that through a little bit before you make decisions. I get the Braves did it. I understand the Braves took chances and they were successful. I also know that the Reds could try to do the same, but if you're going to do that, I think one thing that Nick Kirby did say that's 100% true and accurate is if you're going to do that, you need to try to do that on the forefront before you see something that makes you think, wow, it's confirmed. You're not going to be able to buy a stock for a lot of value before it's shown that its potential is there. Now, you can suggest to me that, hey, you could still get a steal on Elly because he's not really done a whole lot yet. Well, I can tell you this. If you're Scott Boras and you're Elly De La Cruz, your confidence is growing by the day. You're starting to believe, you know what? I'm going to stick here. I'm looking around the diamond. I know I'm better than everybody. And you know what? I'm not taking a pay cut anymore. If you wanted to try to pay me last year, or hell, you wanted to pay me when I was in the minor leagues, we could have a conversation, a reasonable conversation about a quote-unquote team-friendly deal. The question now is, what is a team-friendly deal? Is it a $300 million contract? Is it not? Because I don't know if I'm going to buy into the idea of signing $300 million contracts after what I've seen so far. And that's not even including, last thing I'll say, is injury. And obviously, nobody can expect that, but that has to be part of the equation as well. This guy relies heavily on his athleticism, and it's God-given. But what does it look like? What does that athleticism look like either after an injury, and again, knock on wood. But that's a possibility. And then the second thing would be, what does that look like when you're age 31 to 35 from an athleticism standpoint? And maybe you just don't care what that contract looks like at 31 to 35, and you just brush it off because it's not that much money anymore. And if that's the case in Major League Baseball, if a $300 million contract is going to be the norm, okay, I can buy into it. But I think at some point in Major League Baseball, the bubble's going to have to burst. The finances don't add up. Maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe they know more than me. But for the Reds, they're not the Dodgers. The finances aren't going to add up the same way. And that's a Major League Baseball problem. Yes, you've heard me talk about that before. But the last thing here, and I know I'm rambling, is that I just don't want, again, we got another situation that's great. It's a beautiful thing in front of us. I just don't want to sit here and cannibalize, again, our fan base. It's going to turn into this toxic thing to where it's like one side of the aisle wants to extend Elly, one side doesn't. I just want to watch him play and enjoy him playing. And I don't want to argue whether or not he's going to extend for $300 million or not. I just, again, a little bit of patience. If you would have asked the fan base last year if they would have signed Matt McClain to a long-term deal, you'd have had 90% of the population that are Reds fans saying, sign me up. How's that look now? Doesn't look all that great. All right.
Just one thing that I would like to point out is just the Reds are kind of already dipped their toes into trying to make team-friendly deals with Hunter Green, right? Like they're already in that process. You try to do the same thing with Elly De La Cruz, and I see no problem with that. But the $300 million suggestion that people are throwing out there where it's like you're paying him top dollar at this point, I don't think the Reds can even really afford that at the moment. Not when they're in the middle of trying to rebuild something up. Like
it just goes into what you want to do, right? I mean, like, do you want to risk? Do you want to gamble a little bit, or do you just want to ride off with the 5 years that you're going to get with Elly De La Cruz? 5 years, after this year, and then you're going to more than likely see him walk out the door because, as we know, these contracts are going up. Right, they're getting more expensive, and in 5 years they're going to be even more expensive. $300 million contract 5 years ago was top of the league. Now Bobby Witt just signed it last year, and that looks like the going rate for the franchise shortstop that is a perennial MVP candidate, who I think is what the expectation is for Elly De La Cruz. Will he get there? No, but you brought up all the teams that have already done it. Ozzie Albies. With the Atlanta Braves, he would be in his contract year this year. He's signed for the Atlanta Braves for 3 more years at $7 million a pop. You're obviously not going to get that rate, but they signed it all the way back in 2019, and we're kind of at the cutting edge of that. The Hunter Green deal is a great example. It'd be almost impossible for the Reds not to come out on top of that deal. Signing Hunter Green $9 million or whatever it is per year seems like a steal based on what the going rate for starting pitching is or pitching period is in the MLB anymore. So, yeah, you're going to have to gamble if you want to do this Elly De La Cruz. Do you want to play with Elly De La Cruz for 5 years and see if you can get it done? Or do you want to extend that window and, have a little bit of risk? That's what it comes down to.
What is the proper amount of risk associated? Like extending him an extra 3 years so you'd get control of him for 8? What is the target there for a reasonable?
It would be a 10-year, $300 million contract in all sincerity.
Maybe 12 years.
So
if we can get 12 years, that would be ideal.
You'd get Elly De La Cruz for an extra 6-7 years.
I mean, the money is all spread out in between those extra
Correct.
5. Okay.
Correct.
And there'd be, they could do it incentive-based. Hunter Green's is a very incentive-based contract. The way Elly plays baseball, you could certainly make that kind of deal with him. You steal 45, 50 bases in the season. You hit 40 home runs, 35 home runs. You could. Good.
I was going to say, and if Elly does turn into an MVP caliber player over the next 2 years, when he goes to arbitration, he's going to be getting close to $30 million, as guys like Shohei Ohtani did.
100%.
You're going to be paying $20 million plus for him anyways in 2 years if he turns in to be a stud. So back to your.
It takes two to go to the table and do a deal. I find it hilarious that everybody's just like Elly. I mean, I'm not trying to kill people, but Elly's the only guy that there's no one like Elly. Okay, yeah, and they're gonna go to the table and they're gonna ask for money because they know that they're one of one. All right, Elly De La Cruz conversation continues right after this on 1410 Wing AM. All right, we are back on 1410 Wing AM, continuing our conversation around Elly De La Cruz. My point is this. It's relatively simple. You're finding yourself in a position now where if you want to go to the table and have a conversation around Elly De La Cruz, it's about the stock price. It's about where exactly is the relationship between what his value appears to be and what it looks like. Because right now, if you're going to extend Elly or you're going to pay Elly, you're also paying for some of the potential, clearly. Right? You're not paying for something that's an absolute fact. Mm-hmm. You're paying for something that you actually think might exist, and it's a reasonable thing to think as to why it might exist. But joining us now is none other than a guy that's seen a lot of baseball games. I think that might be putting it. That might be understating it. Guy's been around the league. He's seen a lot of good players. Tom, we bring you in. There's been a lot of discussion.
Good morning, Trace.
A lot of discussion.
Before we do it, Trace, good morning. First of all, good morning.
Good morning, Tom. I was going to get right into this hard-hitting question. We got a lot of time.
I
don't know if
I've
we got
been
enough time in
listening
the
to you.
day for this one.
I know.
Listen, Elly De La Cruz has been spectacular over the last, call it 3-4 weeks, right?
Yeah.
And I think everybody already, before he's even done this, could admit that he's got all the potential in the world. You find yourself now to where a fan base is starting to do the hey, what do you do with this guy? Do you want to extend him? Do you not want to extend him? How do you go about it? You're going to use the Braves as a reference on how maybe you can go at it when they're really young and try to get some semblance of a team-friendly deal. Or you could just say, you know what, we're going to wait it out. Maybe we'll hit arbitration. We'll pay what he's worth during arbitration, and then we'll try to find a way towards the back end to make this thing make sense. How much of this actually, over your experience throughout your career, how much of this, quite frankly, just comes down to back-end finances that really none of us are privy to versus, hey, this guy's actually worth X, Y, Z, and he can help us, basically help us win baseball games?
Well, this whole thing, Trace, about signing the young guys began, if you go back, and I mean, it was really cutting-edge stuff when the Cleveland Indians started to do it back in the 1990s. They had guys like Albert Bell and Roberto Alomar and Kenny Lofton. They just had a whole fleet of players that I mean, not all of them were Elly De La Cruz, but a couple of those guys I just mentioned are in the Hall of Fame, or going to be in the Hall of Fame, or should be in the Hall of Fame. So they were the first ones to start doing this in Cleveland. But bear in mind, Cleveland was selling out every game. They had set the major league record at the time for the most consecutive sellouts for home games. In fact, that still stands to this day by light years. The Dayton Dragons are the only team that have more consecutive sellouts than the Cleveland Indians had at one point in time. Anyway, then it died for a long time because I think some of the owners saw, there are positives to giving a young guy a long-term contract. There also can be some negatives. You alluded a minute ago to Matt McClain and what can happen. The Hunter Green thing this year, for example, is not necessarily a long-term contract. Yes, it is, but it's basically a one-year extension of what they would be facing if they went to arbitration with him every single year. So, there are different ways of playing this. The bottom line is I agree with you. Let the guy go out and play. I've seen a lot of this with the fan base and every fan base. Elly will have a couple of great games and everybody like, oh, this is the best player in baseball. And then all of a sudden he'll commit a couple of errors. He'll bat right-handed for 2 or 3 games in a row and he won't get a hit. And everybody's saying, oh, he's got to get rid of switch hit and go bat left-handed. In my opinion, you're going to have to – the rubber will meet the road sooner or later. But I'm with you. I would make sure we get through this season and kind of see where we are with things. Because it's only his first full year in the major leagues. Yes, it's probably going to cost you a little bit more money because you're buying out another year potentially of free agency. But I would just make sure, go look at the numbers of Ronald Acuna Jr., his first full year in the big leagues. Just go look at those numbers. And that gave Atlanta a foundation to feel really good about the consistency, the potential consistency of that player. I think the Reds, they know what they got here, and they know sooner or later they're going to have to pay him. But I wouldn't be getting all worked up about it right now.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest question mark is, how much priority does this Reds front office want to put towards trying to extend some of these young guys? And you find yourself in a position where the finances around Major League Baseball more or less are the thing that concern me, less than actually how good will Elly be. Is he worth the contract? Because let's face it, the Dodgers, the Mets, we've named all these teams before. You don't need me to go through the laundry list of names. There's teams that can afford to miss, right? There are teams that it will not hamstring if they ultimately end up getting hurt or they don't play in a certain manner in which you thought or expected them to play. You can survive in advance in those areas or those franchises. You can't do that with the Reds. You just can't do it. The finances for the Cincinnati Reds are just significantly different, and people might want to say, "Hey, you don't know the books. You don't know you don't know what the ownership group actually makes." And I guess to be fair to them, Tom, that would be right. But to try to round this out, your overall thought process here as we move forward, just on the landscape of Major League Baseball as a whole, and what it looks like for smaller franchises. Do they even have the ability anymore? When you have the Dodgers that are going to go spend $1 billion on one player, do they even have the ability anymore to re-sign guys? Because one would say, if you're Scott Boras and you're Elly De La Cruz, with all due respect to the Reds, you're very thankful that they gave you an opportunity. But let's face it, it's not a charity case. They're not going to sit around and say, well, I'm going to sign a team-friendly deal because I like you. I just seen a guy that was the best player in baseball signed for $1 billion. I'm not signing for $300 million. I'm going to wait this out.
Well, every player is a little bit different, Trace, just like you and me and everybody else. There's some guys that, Votto, for example, he really liked playing here. He wanted to play here. Now, he got a top-of-the-line contract. He didn't get Albert Pujols money, but it was pretty close. And those were the 2 top deals in baseball at the time when Joey signed that 10-year deal. He wanted to be here. I sincerely believe Albert Pujols wanted to be in St. Louis. But the dollars took him out to California, and we saw how that worked out. Really, in the grand scheme of things, it didn't work out at all. And so, the challenge for the small market team clearly is, Trace, you can't keep everybody. You know what I mean? This is where, I think all of us feel like having a salary cap is a good thing, and it evens out the playing field for the smaller market teams, and it does. The NFL is proof positive of that. And you would get a lot of people out there who will say, well, go look at all the different teams in Major League Baseball that have made the playoffs and there are a lot of smaller market teams that have made the playoffs. And they would be factually correct. But there's only one smaller market team that has won the whole thing. I mean, won it all. And that was the one year Kansas City caught lightning in a bottle in a very similar circumstance to the way the Reds are now. They were built around a ton of really good players who, when they had the opportunity, unlike the Reds, say, of 2012, they made the most of it and went and won the World Series. They went to 2 of them, they won 1 of them, and they vanished off the landscape ever since because they couldn't keep players. So, kind of like the Bengals, you can't keep everybody. You can't keep Higgins. You can't keep Chase. You can't keep Burrow. For the Reds, they can't keep McClain. They can't keep De La Cruz. They can't keep Steer. They can't keep Lodolo. They can't keep Abbott. They can't keep Ashcraft. They can't keep all of them. So this is where, the general managers have really, really difficult jobs. They're not digging concrete ditches every day, don't get me wrong. But this is where they have tough decisions to make, and decisions, quite frankly, that will affect whether they're going to be gainfully employed with the same organization. Because if you do give one of these guys the big, big money, that is going to come at the cost of somebody else. Now, you got to pay to play. And if the Reds ownership feels like, they can't do this, then you move on. But these are the really tough. It's a great problem to have. It's a great problem to have. There's no question about that. And it's a problem that the Reds have not had forever and a day, really since the days of Eric Davis and Barry Larkin and Paul O'Neill and that whole group that came up together, Rob Dibble, Norm Charlton, Tom Browning, all those guys. So this is a similar kind of situation. And when you get your shot, if they get their shot, they got to go win. That's the bottom line. We're talking about individual contracts here. Right. I think most fans would just like to see the team win a playoff series. 1995 was the last series they won, and that was a best of 3 against the Dodgers. That's the last playoff series they won.
I 100% agree, and I think that's where most of my take lies. Is I care more about the fact of seeing competitive baseball than maybe I do of making sure that I get to see one guy in a uniform for his entire career.
Think about the Angels, Trace. Think about the Angels. They've been watching Mike Trout for 10 years now.
Correct.
They have not won a playoff series. Not one playoff series. And this is a team with big money that was able to go spend a bunch of money on a lot of other guys. Spent it poorly, but, I'm not sitting here endorsing not giving him a long-term contract. I wouldn't do it today. But if you do it, you have to know that something is going – there's cause and effect, right?
Yep.
There's cause and effect.
Speaking of cause and effect, I'm gonna make a chat poll question of the day. I'm gonna have you answer it first, and it's obviously hypothetical. This isn't pinning anybody against each other. It's more just your own personal feelings. It's not that you like one group over another group. But if I were to say, hey, from a reasonable cost perspective, would you rather extend CES, Noelve Marte, and Matt McClain, 2 guys that have not done a whole lot, and another guy that's obviously been healthy that hasn't really, I don't want to say hasn't proven it, but CES has struggled a little bit. You got those 3 guys. Would you be willing to extend all 3 of those guys for the same amount of money, whatever it may be, this is very hypothetical, for Elly De La Cruz?
Yeah, I would. I'd always rather have quality and quantity. The Marte thing, it's a hard read. We know his story and we know what happened. McClain, injury, that required surgery. How's that going to affect him? But if you were giving me those 3 guys, let's say, for example, before they got hurt and before all this sort of stuff happened, and I know you can't do that, but if you're just asking me a straight across the line question, say if we were making this call back in January, would I rather have 3 guys on a long-term deal than 1 guy on a long-term deal for roughly the same amount of money? Of course. You got 3 positions you got filled there with really good players. Wouldn't you?
I would, but I also know that there's going to be some pushback from the idea that, listen, Elly De La Cruz has the ability to be the best player in baseball, and that has the chance to make your club significantly better because he plays a premium position as well. I'm not naive to the fact that he doesn't play shortstop, and he might play at an exceptional level, and he might end up being every championship team. You'll have some people push back and say, the Yankees were the Yankees, but Derek Jeter was a big part of maybe the foundation and the piece as to what made them tick. Now, you're going to have people that argue the fact that they have great players around Derek Jeter.
Yeah,
That's
they
probably
had
why
a lot
they
of
were
great
good.
players.
But I'm just using that as an example. Elliot, you got something for Tom?
Yes, I do. Hi, Tom. How are you doing?
Elliot, it's nice that somebody says hi, Tom, and good morning to you, Elliot.
Good morning to you, Tom. Yes.
And good morning to
the stray,
Casey and Reed as well.
Casey and
Good morning,
Reed.
Tom.
How you doing? Listen, I wanted to piggyback a little bit on your conversation there. You mentioned CES, you mentioned Steer, you mentioned Ellie, you mentioned all these young guys. If you had to say who has shown the most in their very young careers, I know, Matt McClain, Noel V, CES, who has shown the most, is your answer Elly De La Cruz?
Yeah, the most inconsistent. But, I mean,
What a ricochet.
I mean, the most inconsistent of that trip. Let's be honest about it. I'll take CES out of the question. Let's just say of the big three guys that have been around a little bit longer than the others. You got McClain, you got De La Cruz, and you have Steer. Steer is by far the most consistent of the group. I mean,
I agree.
Remote close, okay? And then after that, you would have to say from the time they brought him to the big leagues till before he suffered the injury in September, that McClain would have been the next most consistent player. Now, the one who steals all the highlights, we know, is Elly. But right now, I mean, look, what De La Cruz is doing right now, fellas, is unbelievable. I mean, he's really playing, man. I mean, whether you're talking about home runs, you're talking about getting on base, you're talking about stolen bases, you're talking about hitting the ball in the seats, you're talking about by and large defensively. He's young. All young shortstops are going to make some errors. You live with it. So what? But, yeah, I mean, De La Cruz is he's the most talented cat of that group, and you can make an argument that him and Acuna are the two most purely talented players in the league.
So saying that, and I know you said you don't want to extend him tomorrow.
Not today. No.
At some point, though, if he continues to do the things that you just said he's going to do, that number is going to increase. And it's going to continue to increase until eventually the Cincinnati Reds, unfortunately, are out of money. We aren't the Dodgers. We're not the Braves. We're not the Astros. We're not the Rangers. We don't have money. The Cincinnati Reds don't have, relatively, as much money as the top-tier franchises in this sport. We are able to make deals similarly to Hunter Green. Hunter Green, whether or not you wanted to extend him is irrelevant because it was for a starting pitcher, for the ace that you think he is, the Reds think he is. That's a cheap contract. And not only is it cheap, it's incentive-based, Tom. And that's what I think, if you did an Elly De La Cruz incentive-based contract mixed with a little bit of that Shohei Ohtani deferred money stuff, you can make a contract that doesn't handcuff you. So if that was on the table for you, let's say it's heavily incentive-based and we're doing Shohei Ohtani deals where a lot of it's going to be deferred payments. Would you take that deal as an extension?
Well, but here's the problem, Elliot. Here's the problem. One, there used to be in baseball a lot of incentive-laden contracts. There are very few of those anymore that make a substantial difference on what you're going to pay somebody. I mean, it's not like one of those deals where you see in a contract when you're giving a guy like De La Cruz, Acuna Jr., young player, even use Hunter Green. He might have a clause in there that says, okay, if he wins the Cy Young, he makes an extra $500,000 or $1 million. Well, in the grand scheme of things, on what you'd be paying him per year on an Elly contract, for example, say it's the MVP. Okay, he gets $1 million, $2 million for the MVP. Now, to $1 million or $2 million to you and me, that's a heck of a lot of money, right? Life-changing money. But guy, in a contract like that, one, it's not going to be built like that. That will not happen. Number two, when you start getting into deferred money, okay, correct me if I'm wrong here, the Reds for the last couple of years, their second and third highest paid players on the team were Ken Griffey Jr. and Bronson Arroyo.
100%.
What did that keep them from doing? What did that keep them from? There will come a day. You got to pay the piper sooner or later, whether it's the money now or down the road. I mean, if you want to give De La Cruz, like the Dodgers did, a 10-year contract, and, most of that money is going to come starting when he's 35 years old. Well, guys like you and me and Trace and Reed and Casey are sitting around in 12 years from now, we're going, can you believe the Reds still owe Elly De La Cruz $35 million this year?
That's a fair point, and this will be my last question for you. If they did that and the Reds win a World Series in the next 10 years, wouldn't you say that's worth it? Wouldn't the World Series championship within the next 10 years be worth the circumstances that come after the fact?
I think you can make an argument that from an emotional standpoint, that's where you get into the whole thing. And we've had this debate on this show before. Would you rather be a competitive team and get to the playoffs every year, right? Yeah. And the best example is the Atlanta Braves back in the 1990s. They won 12 or 13 straight division championships. They won one World Series. They won one. And man, did they have some, I don't need to tell you, did they have some players and some teams. Oh, yeah. But from a fiscal standpoint, I would think, depending on when that World Series title occurred, you're talking about your season tickets getting bumped up. You're talking about, all kinds of sales and so forth getting bumped up. The key in all of this, Elliot and guys, that no one ever talks about, I don't know if the Reds are going to be able to do anything if they can't figure out this television contract. Because this is still, to this day, this is still the elephant in the room that nobody talks about. The number one sales sponsor for the Cincinnati Reds by light years is not UDF, is not Encore Technology, is not fill in the blank. It is their television partner. And they're paying them anywhere from $40 to $50 million a year. Right now, the company that has that television contract is in bankruptcy. They've already dumped 3 teams. Now, Major League Baseball has given them back, I think it's 75%, 80% of what that rights fee money was going to be. Yeah. But when the contract ends as it was originally written, Major League Baseball is not promising them anything. So this is a Major League Baseball problem, and it's a Reds problem. If all of a sudden you're a company, and let's just say, just pick a round number. Say you made $400 million, or say it's $300 million, but 50 of it came from one place, and all of a sudden that 50 is going away. You got some problems.
Yeah.
Got
Real
some major problems. You got some major problems. Some would suggest perhaps you look like you could be the Nationals, but the Nationals won a World Series. And that's the thing. If you win a World Series, then you can kind of excuse perhaps all of the blunders that you could say the back end of those contracts look like. But that's you're playing with some fire doing that. You're playing with some fire because we all damn well know that essentially when you get in the postseason, the Dodgers have proved if you have the best team, you don't always win it. And just because, again, you go for it or whatever it may be, it's almost like we got 2 worlds colliding right now, Tom. We got the people that are always wanting to make sure that you don't ruin the farm system. You want to make sure that you keep your options open. And you have obviously the folks that are wanting to win now. The lines are starting to get blurred here on Elly De La Cruz. So we shall continue to follow along and see what ultimately happens. Thank you for coming on, as you always do. You've obviously been familiar with the radio. We got a big radio guy in here, Elliot. He's
big radio guy.
Big radio guy. He lets me know all the time. We got to run, I guess, because they have ads. They got to do commercials.
He's got all of his buddies back from the iHeart days. The rest of us are just sort of off the beaten path a little bit. We're well aware.
That's right. Well, somebody told us we're just a bunch of ex-professionals. So we'll try to find our way in the world.
Where did I hear that? I've heard that somewhere. That's a hell of a line. I've heard that.
Unbelievable line. All right, Tom. Well, you enjoy the rest of your day. Good to see you. We'll see you later this week.
See you, fellas.
All right, that was Tom Brenneman. He is dialed in. He'll be back better than ever here on Chatterbox Sports later this week. But we got to run. We got to do some ads. 1410 Wing AM right after this. All right, speaking of ads, let's stay on track here with our team. We're gonna stay off the radio here for just a moment. I don't want to continue the Elly De La Cruz discussion right now because I think I want to do that on the radio, and I actually think this is there's a lot of times, if we're going to be openly honest on this show, there's a lot of times when you can sit in here and you try to formulate opinions and you try to have reasonable conversation that you're really just you're gasping for air. This is a reasonable discussion, and I think that we should continue to have it. And we'll do it for as long as we want to. April overreaction. Hell, we'll just lump that in here with it. Top 10. I was going to do a fun little bit. Maybe we'll get to that before the end of the show. And then Reggie Bush. Don't know if I'm going to get to that take today, but if we do get to it, if we don't get to it, I'll just say right now, shout out to Reggie Bush. I am very happy for him.
And he should have gotten it.
Yes, 100% agree. So, all right, let's do some ads. Casey?
Yeah, I got it. The Reds report is brought to you by Encore Technologies. Encore Technologies provides IT solutions for a data-centered world with the suite of services from mobile computing to desktop to data center, supporting both centralized and work-from-home computing modules to improve efficiency and
productivity.
Good work. Productivity is what he said.
It's great work.
Where's the path to innovation start?
It begins right here. Visit encore.tech. Path to
Fantastic.
innovation begins right
Begins
here.
where?
Right here.
Okay.
Visit encore.tech. And let me tell you about this lovely bottle of water right here.
Hmm.
You hear that?
What's your favorite part about Pawnee water?
Well, it's clearly the pH level of it. It's an 8. It's not a 9. It's not a 7. It's a perfect 8, which means it's healthy. It's a
Speaking of which,
healthy
when
alkaline
are the
water.
Paul brothers going to go to prison for this prime that they keep just pushing right down my children's throat?
What?
Going to prison? Why
Wait,
would
what
they
are
go
we
to
talking about?
prison?
Guys, come on.
Who? What are we talking
humor,
about?
Humor. What?
What do we? What?
We'll be better.
The Paul
Be better.
brothers or whichever Paul it is that's just
Logan
promoting
and
this
Jake
prime.
Paul.
Well, who is it? Which
Targeting-
one is it?
It's both. It's
What's
both.
Prime? What is?
It's an energy drink that Logan and Jake Paul push.
Yeah, it's just not good for you either.
They're-
By the
they're-
way, it made me think. I was thinking a Pawnee water, very healthy for you. Prime, horrible for you. Yet marketing 101, man. Just go after the kids. If you get the kids that think it's cool, you got it figured
no
out.
free ads, but whatever they keep saying, Prime or whatever it is.
The fact that you don't know what Prime is.
I don't know what Prime is, but
So this is a kids thing,
They
or
market.
is he uncultured?
I've never been
Is he
marketed-
uncultured?
I've never seen an ad for
Or
this.
am I
He doesn't have
just
kids.
I
He
have
doesn't have
kids.
kids.
They don't
Like it's
pay.
like, have you ever like watched TV and been like, I haven't seen a toy ad in forever? Then
No.
you realize, like, I don't watch Nickelodeon anymore. That's Prime, right? They
I
market
don't buy it, by the way. I'm getting accused by Alex in the chat saying that I buy it. I don't buy it. So what it does do to me, though, is I have to listen to my kids complain to me the whole way home because I didn't buy it and they're not cool because I didn't buy them Prime. But I'm not doing it.
I try to avoid the Paul brothers. They're like the Kardashians for people who suck. But
I like that take. That's one of the better takes you've had since
those
you've
two
been
guys.
here.
Those two guys stink. But my favorite part about Pawnee water is how smooth it is. It goes right down the gullet, nice and easy, nice and smooth. Unlike Prime, which has rocks and whatever in there. Reed, what's your favorite part about the Pawnee water?
Probably the pH scale. I like how it's like an even. It's right there in the middle. It's not too basic. It's not too acidic. It's just perfect pH scale. That's what I love about Pawnee water.
That was really nice. What was that? What was that? Was that your
don't know.
George Washington accent?
Sometimes you just start doing something and
Yeah.
just keep it going.
Yeah.
Like you just keep it going.
It is kind of wild talking every single day for this amount of time. You just inevitably at some point you say stuff that you look back on and you're just like, I don't really know how it got to that point where I said that. But
Yeah.
here we are.
Yeah, listen, it's a grind. It's a grind. I think the people that do this for a living, like us, I think we have it harder than most people realize. But that's okay. That's okay. We just keep
So hard.
keep on grinding.
You know
here.
what I think we should do as a bit now is I think I'm going to sign you up for I think you should go lay some concrete for a week. And we'll film it. For a guy that just sat there and told all these hardworking, lovely people straight to their face that you got it so tough.
I didn't say that.
I think you did.
I said it's.
Somebody clip it. Somebody clip it. You said that we
nobody
got it
clip
so
it.
tough.
Nobody
I
clip
think
it.
for a week you should go lay some concrete.
You give me a shovel, and I will dig you the best hole you've ever seen. You go ahead and get me a shovel, and I'll go outside and do it right now. But I said it's
Some
harder
say
than
you
people
do it
think.
regularly already on the show.
I
and
said
you
it's.
jump in it
I
yourself.
said, ooh, funny guy. Listen. I do. I think that it's harder than people realize. That I do. I stand by that take. I think it's hard to come up here and talk every day about nonsense. As Brian B says, we just reuse the same takes over and over again.
Yeah, Brian B.
That's a hater.
He's a big fan.
Oh yeah, he is. Let me. What else was I gonna? I was gonna mention something before I was interrupted just then. Now I forgot it.
Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button,
That's right.
and look at our memberships because
I
we're
gotta-
starting to expand that.
I got a big thing quickly on memberships today. If you are a member, you're gonna have a chance to win $1,000. Just so you know.
Ooh.
Whoa.
Ooh, hey,
Members.
later on today, programming note, Miami softball's going to be on our YouTube channel. If you guys want to watch that, sure, go ahead. Nationally ranked Miami softball. It's going to be 4P.
Love that.
4P if you want to watch that.
Love that.
Are you going to tease the $1,000 thing? I think members would like to know that.
Yeah, I mean, I
What's going on
thought
here?
I just did tease it. Isn't that?
Well, I
isn't
think that was-
what
I
You
don't
just
think-
said they have a chance to win $1,000.
Yeah, I don't think you really
didn't
get
say
into
how
the
they would
detail.
win.
I think you just kind of just
Isn't
blew
that
by.
teasing?
I guess.
So you don't want me to
How's the-
tease it. You just want me to tell them. But
Well, yeah.
is that what it is?
Well, I think you
Well,
can
I'm
tell
trying to
them
get
in
to
the
the
tease.
bottom of
little
what
more-
you're asking
You can
for.
tell them in the tease.
Can you give a little more elaborate tease?
Yeah.
A little more detail.
Why don't you elaborate?
Don't spill all the beans.
Yeah,
just,
don't
just
spill
a
all the
couple.
beans. Just give me 5 beans. Can I have 5 beans?
So if you're a member,
Oh.
there's a place where we can communicate on the back end of YouTube. Yeah, like there's a chat.
Yeah,
There's a
that's
chat.
right. Yep.
I do need to figure out one thing though before I say this 100% is can you edit your comments in the chat after the fact and manipulate it? I want to know if you can do that. If you can't, that will help significantly. If you can, that's fine. We're just gonna have to take a lot of screenshots right before the draft. What I will tease is on the back end of the show, when the show is over, I'm going to have Casey put in a question or whatever it is, and then everyone can chat underneath it. If you get it right, you win $1,000. And I'm not suggesting for a single second it's impossible. Is it probable? Some would say it's not probable, but it is possible. You're going to have to make basically an NFL draft, mock draft of the first certain amount of picks. If you get them all right, you win $1,000.
First 10, first 16.
I was thinking first 10, which I think is pretty fair. No?
Those are the easier ones to get.
First 10. If you can get the first 10 picks of the NFL draft,
Do you have to pick the
$1,000.
team? Do you have to just pick the right player in that slot, or do you have to pick what team he goes to?
I think it needs to be just the player.
Okay.
You're going to list
Yeah,
the
you're
player.
just going to list the players?
Yeah, if there's a trade up or whatever, it doesn't matter that if they take him. Like if Caleb Williams is the first overall pick, you don't have to say it's with the Bears. It's the
Okay.
first pick, Caleb Williams.
Okay.
How many of those picks are automatics?
First two.
First 2?
For sure. And then it all kind of, I think it all goes after what the Patriots decide to do with Drake May.
People are saying it's impossible. I mean, listen, you don't win $1,000 for nothing, okay?
That's right.
You got to earn it.
That's right.
You think we're just going to walk in there and jolly like, hey, $1,000 for everybody if you can get the first pick of the NFL draft.
Can't be handing out thousands.
Boy, yeah, and I'm gonna tell you right now. I don't know if you looked at the bank account around here lately.
Oh,
but we'd be we'd be out of business in no time. We'd be out of business in no time. What's wrong, Elliot?
Got to send some invoices out.
Yeah, yeah. We're gonna have to put some urgents on those. Might have to. I'll tell you what we'll do instead. We'll just do what the Reds do. We'll basically just we'll extend everybody and then
3, 2, 1 nights at Chatterbox.
yeah, and then what we'll do is we'll pay everybody out $1 per year for the next 1,000 years.
That'd be worth it.
We could afford it if we did that.
Everett
worth
said
it.
we went woke, and now we're going broke.
Who went woke?
I don't know. I feel like I'm certainly not woke.
Yeah,
Everyone knows
Reed's
that
not
one.
woke at all.
Everyone
No.
knows
He
that.
doesn't. You guys don't know his politics at
Yeah,
all.
that's right. No one knows my political leanings. That's the best mystery.
Also, some inside baseball here is there's a giant fly flying across the
it
room
is.
here. Giant fly.
Looked athletic.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that flying around here. If we're being
fly.
honest.
Massive fly.
I don't know,
It
has
might
anybody-
be, it might be attracted to Reed's coffee over there. That might be what happened.
Where's
but
that at?
Under your desk.
Oh, really? Is that what it is?
There was an incident yesterday.
Yeah, I spilled some coffee on the desk.
Oh, man. I'll tell you what Reed is the master of doing. He is the master of spilling some coffee. So a quick little fun story before we go back on the radio here. This is old school Chatterbox.
I don't even know this one.
Oh, you know about this one. So around the what we'll call the pandemic, right? COVID.
2020.
This is back when you were isolating yourself, quarantining, and you weren't allowed to be around people. So we decided, you know what? Hey, I'll take a computer to my house. You can take a computer house. Reed, if you need to go in the office, you can go in the office. Well, Reed, I think at some point he was doing the shows with me, and he was going to the office to do the shows. No problem at all. And turns out Reed had spilled some coffee. Okay, this is when nobody's ever going in there. And turns out he spilled some coffee.
I don't remember this.
The fact that you don't remember this is preposterous.
I don't.
Okay, well, he spills coffee on the floor. Now, Reed must have decided he just wasn't going to clean this coffee up for quite some time. And I tell you, we decided we got a chance to go back in the office for a second. Reed gave us a quick little warning, a little heads up. Hey, I spilled some coffee in the office. I'll clean it up. I walk in that office, and when I tell you I had to leave because it smelled so bad, I don't know what was growing in there, but it was absolutely horrific. Horrific.
Not a clean guy.
And
Never
the fact
replaced
is that
anyone.
I don't understand how you don't remember that because
I remember-
you had to clean it, which means it had to be horrifically, like, just.
I make a lot of messes.
Now,
I
we
make
didn't
a
have
lot- I
masks
make a lot
back
of
then,
messes.
so maybe you had a lot of masks to work with.
I remember we did the Miami Mac. We did the Mac track championships, and it was an early morning, and I went and got like a donut and some chocolate milk, and I forgot that I left chocolate milk in the van, and it sat in the van for like 2 weeks in the hot sun, and I remember that stunk. I remember that smelled pretty bad, and I had to detail the
I
van.
do remember that.
I had to detail the van one time.
Yeah. You detailed it, and it still was pretty bad.
Yeah, we gotta get
But
out.
you know what? We've had it didn't stop us. The only thing that can stop us now is the NFL draft. If everybody gets the top 10 picks right, we'll be done.
Could you imagine that?
We'll be done.
That'd be spectacular.
Fried.
That'd
That
be-
would be a good headline for City Beat.
Oh, yeah, it would
Up
be.
and coming, rising. Well, they wouldn't even call it rising, probably. They'd be like floundering, no good for nothing, digital media, internet company goes out of business because their members bankrupted them.
Will Fox Sports Ohio come back to relevance?
Right. Actually, we would. I take that all back. If that actually happened, we would be on City Beat's top 3 next year for the best sports company. You don't think we'd be in the running?
Yeah, I think you're
we'd
right.
check all the boxes.
I think you're right. By the way, before we go back to radio, Casey, this is just for me and you. We do have some timekeeping things we have to take care of here because we went over about 10 minutes in the first half, which means in the second half we gotta narrow down our talking a little bit here, just so to help out the radio guys.
You can do
So just remind me. I think we go 12 minutes, 10 minutes is how we're gonna do it. 12 minutes, 10 minutes for our final 3 segments on the radio.
Okay.
Just so everybody's clear what I'm going to do here.
Everett brings up a good point. He says if there's 3 people that guess 8 out of 10, no, you got to get all 10 right. But if there are more than one person that get all 10 right, then I guess at that point we offer them the ability to either split the money or we do a tiebreaker.
Or you could fire one of
We
us.
love tiebreakers.
And there's Reed bringing it all the way back. I don't know why you keep doing this, man.
What's
I
the
feel like the
ultimate
tiebreaker thing is not that big of a deal. You keep bringing it up. That's like your
It's so annoying.
that's your trigger word for the
It's
Reds.
so
is it just
annoying.
because we had the tiebreaker over the Cubs and you
You
had to
didn't
hear
have
about
the
it?
tiebreaker over the Cubs last year.
Yeah,
What's
we
the
did.
What's the first tiebreaker?
They had
Who has the better record? The Cubs had the better record than the Reds. That's the point. Why worry about a tiebreaker? Why not just beat them out?
Well, I think that you're wrong. I think that the Reds actually had the better record.
The Cubs had more wins and less losses over the course
I'm
of
talking about against
162.
each other.
That's not the first tiebreaker.
He's saying that's the
Oh,
second.
you're saying well that's
Who scored more points?
that's not a-
Who scored more? That's like
not a
it's,
tiebreaker, Reed. Let me explain how that works. That's actually like not a tie. A tie consists of when you have 2 teams that have the exact same thing. That would be called a tiebreaker. But when there's not a tie, there's no breaker. See, that's the cool thing is that it's not a tiebreaker.
Okay.
So the first tiebreaker is actually whoever wins each other more head to head.
Okay.
But
If you go look
but
at-
if
if
there's
you
not
go-
a tie, like you're suggesting, and that's what you're
if you
trying
go
to do,
look at any,
then you wouldn't have to worry about it.
If you go look at any rule book, any sport, any game ever,
Ever.
how do you win the game? Number 1, score more points, score more runs, do whatever.
That's right.
That's number 1. How do you get in the postseason? Have more wins and less losses than the other team.
That's right. You're
That's
right.
the first tiebreaker.
Right. So how'd that work out for the Cubs?
I mean, they finished better than the Reds,
Yeah, and they did.
as they typically do.
Got nothing to show for it.
Oh, we don't?
Absolutely nothing to show
Cubs
for it.
don't
last
have
year.
nothing to show for finishing
Nothing
better than the
for it.
Reds?
I'll tell you what. I mean, could you imagine? I know why I would be bitter now. And I'll tell you what. I'm going to show some empathy here. I tell you what. If I was a fan of a team, and they had a 90% chance to make the postseason with about 2 weeks left to play, and my right fielder, who's been great for us all year long, and my second baseman, who's been great for us all year long, dropped a fly ball, and subsequently booted a ground ball at second base, and then they just basically pissed down their leg the last 2 weeks of the season and missed the postseason, I would be tired of hearing about people talk about tiebreakers too. I would.
Yeah, it is.
To be fair, I would.
Yeah, the Reds have been in playoff contention twice in the last 10 years, and they shit down their legs both times. 2. The Cubs have been in playoff contention, 7 times in the last 10 years, and have.
That's cool. You had your 6 or 7 years running the sun, and so will we.
Sean says if the Reds beat the Phillies one more time, we have the tiebreaker over the Phillies.
I'm well aware. I've got them all. I've got it all up here.
Seems like a guy that hates tiebreakers. It's well entrenched in his brain. All right, let's do a 5-second break here. Let's get back to the radio.
Correct.
All right, welcome back into Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. I'm Trace Fowler, joined with Reed Mouse, Elliot Rearing, Casey McAllister, and gentlemen, we obviously left the break here having a discussion with Tom, and we had a pretty good conversation around the centered around, if nothing else, extensions. I had proposed the poll question of the day. Would you rather extend CES, Matt McLain, and Marte, which is 3 players if you're keeping track at home, or just Elly De La Cruz? And again, I don't know hypothetically if that's even fair. I don't know if you could get all 3 of those guys for the same price tag as you could get just Elly. But certainly, Elly De La Cruz, without question, is going to garner significantly more than those 3 guys at the current state. I would even say if you wanted to make it even, maybe I'm crazy for saying this, but I think you could possibly even add a guy like Spencer Steer into that mix, and it could be even relatively close to the same. But I thought that was being a little unfair. I didn't want to be unfair to Elly and put him up against the world. Maybe I should have, though, because right now the poll results are 64%. Folks would rather extend Elly De La Cruz, 36% for CES, Matt McLain, and Marte. And I think that just proves, if anything else, the power of being a prisoner in the moment. And it's okay to be a prisoner of the moment, no doubt about it. I'm all for watching Elly De La Cruz play as much baseball as humanly possible in a Cincinnati Reds uniform. And I hate that there was one thing that Jim Harbaugh actually said that was very wise, and it had nothing to do with J.J. McCarthy, trust me, because if you listen to him talk about J.J. McCarthy, you start to think that he might have some screws loose. But the thing is that he did say something that I'll never forget, similar to what Travis Steele said about halftimes in the score. But he did say, I don't really like to compare greatness, because when you start to compare greatness, what you end up doing is you start to try to tear down one side, and that inevitably is never something that I'd like to do. And that's where I'm at with this whole extend Elly, or would you rather extend these other guys? I know I proposed the question, but I'll just backtrack, and I just want to say this. These are all Cincinnati Reds players. We all want the best for them. We want the Reds at the end of the day to win baseball games. And I think that in and of itself is the one silver lining to both sides of this aisle. One side of the aisle is going to say, no, we would prefer maybe not to extend Elly right away because we don't know what we're going to get. The other side is going to say he's one of the very few players in Major League Baseball that can actually change the game. Mm-hmm. Both may be right. But we all want one thing, and that is the Reds to win baseball games. The question is, what's the best? What's the best?
What's the recipe? What's the recipe for success?
And the crazy thing is this, and this is where when you do a show with Nick Kirby every day, you always obviously Nick's probably the closest person that I know of that has certain takes when it comes to the way in which you can win as a Reds franchise, and his take's always been, hey, you make sure the farm system is plentiful, you make sure you capitalize on open opportunities within the free agent market on short extensions of guys, or you can overspend, but it's got to be a short amount of time so you don't hamstring yourself down the line. And now you obviously find yourself in a position where Nick Kirby's kryptonite, because we all have that, is Elly De La Cruz. And I think that's okay, but I don't think that you can, and maybe I'm wrong by saying this, but I don't think that you can play, hey, we want to be flexible. We don't want to hamstring ourselves. We want to try to find ourselves in a position where we're always forward thinking. We don't want to get in a position where we're just worried about 2, 3, 4 year window. And then turn around and say you're willing to sign Elly to whatever contract humanly possible, because I got news for you. And I tell you what, here's another take that you can take it to the bank. If I'm wrong, people will kill me for it. I don't think Elly De La Cruz is going to be a great player when he's 31 to 35 to 36 years old. And in order to sign Elly De La Cruz, you're going to have to sign him probably through 34, 35 years old.
You think it's got to be a 15-year deal?
I think, well, my point is for the Reds to afford it, I do think that, yes. To afford it. Now, they could sign him to a 10-year deal, but they're going to lose the car payment analogy that you use, which is, hey, we can give him a bigger contract over 15 years, and we know 5 of these years we're really just kind of we're kind of putting it on layaway, and we're basically paying it off at the end when we really couldn't afford it the years prior. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've said it before. I'll say it again. People hate me for saying it. I think the Castellini spend money. I think that they want to win. The only problem is that financially, maybe I'm wrong. I just don't think that it's in the Reds' wheelhouse to spend that much money on players. I don't think it's financially responsible, and I don't think it's financially possible to do it.
I think it's financially. I don't even think it's whether or not it's possible. I think it's mandatory. I think eventually you have to if you want to compete. What Tom said in the interview is 100% correct. It's you have to have your little miracle run like the Royals had, but that miracle run starts with the young core, such as the Cincinnati Reds. Now the Braves and the Astros, they have their young cores. They build around it because they have money. The Royals and the Reds, not a ton of money. And they hope for the best in their little window, as we like to say. If Elly De La Cruz, if it's my options are Elly De La Cruz or CES, Matt McClain, and who was the other one? Noelvi Marte. I'm picking Elly De La Cruz. He's the guy that everybody's wearing a jersey of in the ballpark. He's the guy. He's the reason people watch Reds games. A lot of the fans. Casey was a new fan last year, in large part because of Elly De La Cruz. There's a lot of Caseys out there who are just joining on the bandwagon here. And it's because of the excitement that he brings. No offense to CES, no offense to Matt McClain, and no offense to Noelvi Marte. They haven't brought you, and it's almost impossible to bring that type of energy, that type of excitement into a city, into a town like Elly did. So it's impossible for them to be compared. I'll say this: Elly has been pretty healthy. He's been available for most of his 2 years here, year and a half. Knock on all the wood, knock on all the wood, knock on all the wood. He's also been the most, again, I don't want to say this, but he's been the most effective based on how many games he's played too. He can hit home runs, he can steal bases, he can run 150 yards backwards in left field and catch a fly ball. And by the way, they ruled that a pop out, it was a fly ball. That's a fly ball that he caught. He caught a left field fly ball last night. I take Elly De La Cruz over him. And I think you can do it to where you don't have to get handcuffed by it. Tom brought in the analogy that Mike Trout. Look at Mike Trout and the Angels. Look what they've done. That organization stinks. That's a bad organization.
Don't you think for every Braves example that we continue to use in here, there's another example of a situation where a team and a franchise has wanted to keep a guy that was homegrown. They pay him a significant amount of money, and it doesn't work out?
Sure. Yeah, 100%.
I mean, it's
but
like
at some point you have to take the risk. That's sports. That's the risk. That's the risk when you buy a Major League Baseball team. You're not going to hit on every free agent. You're not going to hit on Homer Bailey sometimes. Sometimes you miss on Mike Moustakas, who had 30 doubles, 30 home runs, whatever, 100 RBIs the year before you sign him. Sometimes you miss. But when you hit a home run, like you would, I believe you would be hitting one if you sign Elly De La Cruz to a long-term deal, like you hit one with Joey Votto, it's worth it.
They did hit one with Joey Votto, but I mean, I guess my question is like, it's not. Is it? I'll read the guy in here that maybe doesn't have all the blinders, but it's like, are we for sure that it's going to be are we at the position right now where we're all dead set on the fact that? A better question is this.
Let me ask. Can I ask?
Would you rather overpay $40 or $50 million to see what Elly De La Cruz is in 2 or 3 years from now? Or would you rather try to save $50 million or maybe $70 million or something like that on taking the risk on the front end?
I mean, there's a likelihood that if Elly continues to be an MVP caliber player, once again, you're going to be paying $20+ million in arbitration. So that's going to cost you an extra $60 million in just 2 years. And then contracts might be ballooning up to $500 million for a player like Elly De La Cruz. So it's not you're spending an extra $50 million. You're spending an extra $200 million off of spending a 10-year, $300 million. Here's what I don't get. See, as my boss Tracy said, this is where you lose me. This is where you lose me. But when I think about Reds fans, and everyone, and I made this take yesterday that they cannibalize themselves, and I think both sides of Reds fandom is hypocritical in certain matters. Currently, we're seeing the Reds fans that say, "Well, we can't spend money on Elly De La Cruz. We don't." Do we want the Reds to spend money or not?
We want the Reds to be financially capable of going out and getting a guy that we desperately need when we know their team's good enough to win a World Series. Yes. Okay. I just know that if there's a chance the Reds can win a World Series and they got to go overpay a guy for 1 year for a starting pitcher, a true frontline starting pitcher that we know that's what it's going to ultimately probably end up getting over the proverbial hump to get there, I want to have the flexibility to be able to do that. Yes, because I don't care who you are, not one single player. If we keep bringing up this Joey Votto situation, and Everett brings up a good point, and we don't have to jump into it now. I want you to finish your point. But my point is that Joey Votto's career couldn't have gone a whole lot better.
Right.
It went perfect. The Reds still found themselves in a position, though, where I don't know. This is hard to know because you don't know the finances. But was the reason that they couldn't also sign Johnny Cueto? They took a chance on Homer. They swung and missed. I get it, but my point is like there were guys they needed to sign to keep that core together, maybe to be able to win, and they weren't able to do it. And I don't. It's not Joey Votto's fault.
I'd argue they picked the wrong guy. Outside of Votto, they picked the wrong. I mean, Homer Bailey shouldn't have been extended. They did it because he had 2 no-hitters.
Joey's contract also was his age, 29 season or something like that.
Yeah.
Like we're talking about extending Elly to when he's 22 years old, and you're taking him through his entire 20s, and maybe you pay a premium on the back end of an aging Elly, but. I'd slap on an extra $40 million just to, instead of paying 10 years, $300 million, I'll pay 15, $350 if he wants $350.
Yeah.
Like, I'm okay with doing that. Because if the options is we got to pay him $300 million anyways, I'll just prolong the payment a little while longer and pay him and then when you are in contention, you have more money to spend on free agents like you alluded to. I don't know. Like
it's risk reward. There's a reason that there's not an easy answer.
And to the question, are there teams that have done this early contract stuff that it has not hit? Yes. Scott Kingery of the Philadelphia Phillies got like $40 million. He's not a very good ball player. But It hasn't. I can't think of a miss on a major contract yet. We're getting there as more teams are doing it, right? Bobby Witt,
Strasburg, which I know they won a World Series, but
that wasn't when he was 23 years old. That was when he was 30. That was when he was 29. That was after that was his second contract. That's after he was in the league for 8 years. On these early contracts, on the major guys, on the major. Huge contracts. It hasn't missed yet.
Well, how many have there actually been? That's the thing. Like, we don't know yet. The Braves are the one shining example if they hit on.
Tatis hit one. Bobby Witt. And I think we got to go break.
Fair enough. They're making us go to break. The break man is giving us a sign. Which means who knows what we're going to talk about right after this on 1410 Wing AM. But I do know this. We still have our top 10 to get to. And we will do that relatively soon. NFL talk on the way, but I have a feeling that we're probably going to just linger around and talk more Reds and more MLB and more contracts at some point because it's a fun, reasonable debate. And some are asking, were the Reds not successful because of Joey Votto's contract? Maybe we'll get into that and more on 1410 Wing AM. All right, welcome back into a Hump Day edition. I just realized it was Hump Day.
Oh,
do you get into? Elliot? Some are asking, do you get into Hump Day?
Sure, I get into Hump Day. I love a Hump Day. Hump days are the best days. And here's the thing: Wednesday means you're halfway done almost. So we're halfway home,
right.
Halfway to the weekend, baby. You're working for the weekend. I got to work this weekend, but other people do have a free weekend, and when those people do it. Those people have a lot of fun, I imagine. I think there will be people. Are the Reds at home this weekend? Do we know if the Reds are at home this weekend? We don't know. I should have known it before I started asking. No, they're not. So that.
But you know who is at home this weekend?
Ruined my whole point.
You know who is at home this weekend? FC Cincinnati.
That's right.
That's right.
Take a trip on down to TQL.
How about me, Reed, you, all four of us? We go down to FCC. I'll buy the scarves. Reed buys the beer boots. They put their beer in, I think, shoes.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
And then we'll all go down, and we'll watch a 0-0 tie.
Well, they're going to win.
Oh, they're going to win. But ties are kind of like wins in soccer because you still get a point.
That is if you don't hold the tiebreaker.
That's true.
Gotta always pay attention to that tiebreaker. You gotta know who's got the breaker, who doesn't have the breaker. If you tie, you gotta know.
Reed loves tiebreakers.
Boy, he
loves them.
He loves it. He
Early,
loves it more than this country. What's that?
You ready? Early contract extensions in the league right now. Obviously, we all know the Braves. Fernando Tatis had one. Rafael Devers signed one in his year 25 season. Pretty good players. Jackson Churio with the Brewers, who we'll see what happens there. That was almost a $100 million contract outfield. Luis Robert signed one 4 years ago. Really good when he's on the field. Isn't on the field a whole lot, but that was just a $50 million contract. Eloy Jimenez is another one that signed a $50 million contract. I'm going down. Evan Longoria signed one with the Rays back in 2008. So, I mean, there are some misses, but
let me ask you
more
this:
hits than misses.
Would you rather the Reds overpay for Elly De La Cruz on an extension right now, or when he is an MVP type player over the next 2 years, 3 years, and then you have to pay him whatever it would be, $45 million a year, and then the Reds come out and they say we can't do that?
And here's something that you haven't even put in. If Elly De La Cruz isn't good, if Elly De La Cruz isn't what you expect him to be, do the Reds have chances to compete at a serious level anyways?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think so. Yes.
Okay.
I also think that you can make premature judgments on things that you think are going to happen that ultimately never happen. Matt McClain could be a perennial all-star, and he right now unfortunately hasn't been healthy. So that's a big. I get that. I understand it's a big what if, but at the end of the day, it's simple. You are right. We're all talking around the same circles. There's risk involved. The question is how much risk are you willing to take on, and what are the rewards on the other side of that risk? That's basic. That's the basic fundamental principles of trying to figure out what decisions you're going to make in life and which ones you aren't. And the Reds are going to have a big decision coming if Elly De La Cruz continues to play relatively well. And if they extend him, I will say this: I think that there's a couple reasons why I think that they will extend him, and we'll move on to the NFL draft. We'll get all of our top 10 here, as I mentioned before. For those that are on the radio, we have a membership group on YouTube. If you want a chance to win $1,000, you can be a member. You can get on our chat here inside of YouTube and try to guess the top 10 picks in the NFL draft. If you do it, you're gonna win. That said, to finish out the topic of conversation here with the Reds as a whole is it's more or less having to know what the financial situation is for the ball club, and that's the unsexy side of all of this. And I don't think it's a side that perhaps many people want to talk about because it's not fun, but that's where the truth will actually lie when it comes to what the Reds will ultimately end up doing. If the Reds have a lot of financial flexibility and freedom, then I think that they would be actually willing to maybe see out a couple more years of Elly and then just pay him, as you said, Elliot, maybe overpay him to make sure they get to extend him. And you could also make the case that there is no better marketing figure out there right now in Major League Baseball almost as a whole than Elly De La Cruz with the age that he's at and the future opportunities that would come about Elly. He's flashy. The kids love him. Those are the things that we don't really talk about that I do think are important, to be fair. Like
kids are
my kids want to be like Elly De La Cruz, with all due respect. They don't care about the middle reliever bullpen guy that we might be able to sign to actually win the World Series. They're not worried about that. Yeah, they want the team to win, but when you're a child, you look up to idols, and one of the biggest idols that we could have around here is Elly De La Cruz, and that's not lost on me. My problem is never going to be with Elly De La Cruz getting paid. My problem is going to be I want the Reds to make a good financial decision on what they're capable of doing. If they're going to go out and spend $350 million on one player, then I expect them to be able to go out and get more players if they need to when the time is right. I don't want to put all their eggs in one basket, put it that way. Simple as that. Any final thoughts here as we talked 3/4 of this show with contracts and Elly De La Cruz.
Listen, I love that. I think that people love it. I'll add this. I think Reed said it best just then. If Elly doesn't work out, if Matt McLean doesn't work out, and you're not willing to extend those guys right now when they're playing really good, I'd argue that there might not be a point where you're willing to do that, because Elly De La Cruz, if you're not willing to extend Elly De La Cruz, I don't know who you'd be willing to do that for. And if they don't work out, we've accomplished, unfortunately, not a whole lot. But I think they will, and I hope they will, and I believe they will. And if the Reds believe it, they should act on it. Is my point.
I think that they will act on it if they know what the financial future looks like. I think they will. I truly do believe that. I think that they'll get in negotiations with Elly De La Cruz if they know, hey, we're going to have a certain amount of income or revenue that's going to come of TV contracts. And let's face it, Tom already mentioned it. That's the biggest money question mark that there possibly could be.
And here's the good thing about this happening is we can sit here and we can debate if they should do it or shouldn't do it. If it happens and you find out Elly De La Cruz signs a 12-year, $300 million contract, you get to do what I'm going to do Friday morning with whoever the Bengals draft. You just get to be excited about it.
Right.
Like, you just literally just get to go, oh, it happened. Great. He's our player. He's our shortstop for the next 12 years. And then maybe 5 years down the line, you're like, oh, that was pretty dumb. But in the moment, you just get to be excited about it. So it's a win. It's a win-win.
Do you think, final thought on really more or less just the landscape that's Major League Baseball is this, is like you have ownership groups, and obviously around Cincinnati, Castellinis are not liked. And I'm not suggesting I'm not being a stand for the Castellinis.
I hope not.
But no, I'm definitely not. But listen to me. You buy into a product, right? And that product really only has a perceived value. You just because the Reds are valued at $500 million doesn't mean that the Castellinis are actually have that money until they sell the group. And now when I say the Castellinis, I'm talking about the ownership group as a whole. I know it's not just the Castellinis. And then my question would be, if you're Major League Baseball, are you ever going to get to a point where you start to enact some type of required to sell rule when you buy a franchise in a Major League Baseball, that if the landscape changes so much and you're not able to keep up with the times per se, that you at some point have to sell the team? And now I don't know legality-wise in the United States if that's even something that you can do or not do, but it does feel like we're getting to a point where there's the haves and the have-nots. And if you aren't able to keep up with the Joneses per se, and I'm not suggesting everyone needs to be like the Dodgers, but if we're actually, and I guess this is more an indictment on Major League Baseball and or the ownership group of the Reds, is that if I have to sit here, and this is where this league sucks, and I love baseball, but this is where this league just sucks. I'm having to debate whether or not I want to keep the best player that I've seen in a Reds uniform since I've started watching them. And I mean that. I think Elly is the best player, hands down, since I've started watching the Reds. But now I'm sitting here and I'm debating and I'm telling to myself, I don't know if I really want to extend this guy because I know on the back end of this it's gonna hurt me. You just said it yourself. Like you watch the Bengals, you just don't do this. You got players, they're your favorite team, and it is what it is.
My mind space is I really don't care what, like, I'm not worried about spending money. Like, and I have that luxury as a Cubs fan because they're just like, yeah, sure. I mean, I don't care that Jason Hayward didn't work out. I don't care that it works out because you know what? There's more money on the back end. Your question about will ownership, will the MLB ever make a rule to where they could kick out ownership? No. Because then the owners would have to vote in that rule. And if I'm voting, yeah, let's make a rule to where the rest of the teams can bully me out of my the thing that I own. That ain't happening. Just ain't happening.
Yeah, I've always thought there should be parameters when it comes to ownership. If you can't compete with the upper echelon tier of owners, I don't think you should be able to buy an MLB franchise. But like Regis said, it's not possible. You can't manage that.
Well, they would have. I mean, it could happen. They would just have to agree. Like, yeah, we can make a rule to where if we unanimously vote out another owner, that dude has to sell his job. And I just don't think that they would do that.
Or if you said starting now, anybody who buys a Major League Baseball franchise has to have X amount of dollars. I mean, that's the only way I can think of that wouldn't be so problematic.
Is instating a salary floor a terrible thing?
No, that's when people talk about salary caps, I feel like a good justification to where the players would agree to this and would incentivize teams that are on the cheaper side to do it. This is where the owners might say no.
Right.
But I even feel like the high end owners would be like, yes, you guys have to spend more because this is where there could be a middle ground where like, hey, you have to spend $100 million. You have to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a tough spot. It's a tough spot because Elly De La Cruz, without question, is an incredible marketing tool as well. Like, I'm not going to sit here and downplay the wins and losses and all that. That's one thing, but Elly De La Cruz, without question, is a superstar. He's a superstar. And if you go to other Major League Baseball stadiums, I mean, Frankie Montas's child has his dad throwing on opening day, and he has a fat head of Elly De La Cruz. And that just goes to show you marketing works. Marketing sells. How much the Reds value in marketing over just pure production on the field, I don't know. But it's going to be a relatively difficult conversation and or situation with Elly De La Cruz. And before we go, I will say they can get it done. They can get it done. And I would like to think that Scott Boras currently is in a position to where waiting out contracts probably would be a little bit of a sour taste in his mouth. It didn't work out. He tried it this last offseason. It didn't work out. If you're Elly De La Cruz, you're already in a position earlier in your life. Now, I know it's a very, very vast different situation than where he was before. But he was also, earlier in his life, he erred on the side of being conservative and making sure that he was financially taken care of, and he foregone 10% of his earnings, which I have no problem with. He just wanted to make sure that he was going to be able to, live a relatively pretty good life, foregone 10% of his career earnings just to have that comfortability. Maybe he wants that comfortability. Maybe he'd be willing to take, and again, team-friendly deals, very, very advantageous thing to say when we're talking about, $300 million. But maybe it's on the deck. Maybe it's in the cards. We shall find out. But to be clear, to round this whole thing out, we're done talking about it. We're going to talk about NFL right after this on 1410 Wing AM. Nobody wants Elly De La Cruz to play more baseball games than all of us. We all want that.
Yeah.
All of us want that. If you're a Reds fan, you want that. But it doesn't make you a bad person to also sit there and say, you know what, I don't know what this looks like 5-10 years from now, and you're apprehensive because you've seen what basically this franchise group has talked about financially before. They act like they're starving and they act like they're broke. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But we can all at least semi-agree that Major League Baseball does have a disparaging issue with the discrepancies of what guys can spend or what some teams can spend and what teams can't. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about the NFL. That'll be the end of a lovely hump day because as we all just know and we all found out that Elliot loves hump days. So we'll be back right after this on 1410 Wing AM. All right, we are back off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. I don't know what's going on right now. Elliot's over there. He's smiling. He's giggling. He's laughing.
No, well, I'm listen.
What did I do?
You did nothing. You did great. You did great. I was just saying if there was a chance we could have broke a little earlier than we did just then, that would have been helpful. But that's okay. That means this segment's extra short. This segment's just a quick little 6-minute segment, but we got that in us.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine because we're talking about the top 10 picks in the NFL draft.
That's right.
You wait a minute. Now, time out. You're going to get on my case. I'm
not getting on anybody's case.
No, you're getting on my case.
I wasn't going to say anything.
You're getting on my case a little bit.
I was going to say a thing.
I was told by the big radio guy when we first started this. What did he say? He looked at me, Casey. At least I know one show. He looked at me and he said, it doesn't always have to be perfect segments. They don't have to be the exact same time frame. They got this little thing called, I don't even remember. It was like a bump and run or something. What was it called?
Touch and go.
A touch and go. A little touch and go. On hump day of all things.
We've already gone over on every segment. So that was the whole point because now we have to catch up a little bit. You can do it every once in a while. Every once, like the Tom segment. That was a great segment, 22 minutes,
sure.
7 minutes over time.
Right.
That's great. We can make that time up unless we keep going over the next couple ones.
Right. Well, then this one's a touch and go. So we had a bunch of good segments, and then in this touch and go segment.
This is a touch and go.
This is a touch and go segment. We've burned 2 minutes of the touch and go segment talking about touch and go.
Touch and go.
That's right. That's because this
touch,
is a very. Say it with me, Elliot. Say it with me. This is a very serious sports talk show.
Very serious.
So we better get to the sports talk. NFL. That's what everybody cares about.
I'm excited. I'm excited for the NFL draft.
That's I wasn't excited
for last year's draft. Bengals had like the 90th pick. I don't care about that 28th pick really. What was it? 27th?
20th.
28th.
That's what happens when you're good.
Yeah, it does. It is what happens when you're good. It's why the Patriots never cared about a draft until this year, ironically, unfortunately for them. But this is the Bengals draft. This is the time to shine. 18th pick, still not a great pick, but if you're a middling team, as unfortunately they were last year due to Joe Burrow's injury, that's where we are. We have a good pick this year. 18th pick. I'm excited. Now, I said this to Reed and Casey yesterday. Did you see this? The odds have moved. It was plus 1,000 for the Bengals to draft a cornerback in the first round. Those odds have now dropped to plus 500.
Wow.
So some gambling odds.
Some value there.
Some gambling movement on the cornerback. Well, you lost value.
Well, I'm saying you could have
If you
gotten
had
some
value,
value.
yeah,
you could have
value.
had the value. Almost like you could have had the value if you'd have signed Elly De La Cruz last offseason, and then this offseason you're losing value. And then 5 years from now we'll figure out that. That was the last segment, by the way. And then the segment before that, and then the segment before that.
Yes.
So this segment that we currently probably have like 3 minutes left in, that you are Mr. Time Man today. What exactly is going to be your first quarterbacks off the board, Elliot?
My first quarterback is off the board is Caleb Williams.
And
Caleb
then-
Williams, that's not.
that was the obvious one.
that's
And
not-
then your next two.
Jaden Daniels is going number 2. I don't think there's
Ooh.
not a world
Yeah,
there's not a world where
done deal
Jaden
pretty
Daniels
much.
doesn't go number 2.
Really?
Number 3 is unfortunately where things can shake up. Number 3 is where things can shake up. If you want Drake May, you can go ahead and do so, or you can be crazy. Let's be crazy and let's bring JJ home. Let's bring JJ home to New England. Could you imagine the Patriots fan base if they drafted JJ McCarthy with that pick? Oh, it would be so good.
Yeah.
I don't think they. I haven't heard anything about the Patriots taking JJ. It's just it's just a matter of if they want to draft a quarterback, they're taking Drake May. Do they want to trade back, or do they want to take Marvin Harrison? I think the quarterbacks are going to go Caleb, Jaden, Drake, JJ. It's just what teams are Drake and JJ going to go to. Because Jaden's, like, Caleb Williams 100% going to the Bears. Everything you're hearing is that the Commanders are taking Jaden Daniels.
What happened with Drake May?
Nothing. I think they just like Jaden Daniels more.
Like, but that one season in college changed it that much because Drake May wasn't draft eligible, right? And then all of a sudden, it was like Drake May was the guy.
Drake May was always going to be the number 2.
There was this conversation if Drake May was able to enter the NFL draft the previous year, then he was going to be one of the main guys, if not the top guy. And now we find ourselves in a position where he's third on the list now, maybe fourth.
I just think it's a really good. I think it's a really good draft class. Yeah. Like I think like Caleb Williams was always going to go number 1. Drake May was never going to go number 1 over Caleb Williams. Then Jaden Daniels comes out and has an incredible year where he's a multifaceted quarterback to where you get kind of a Lamar guy who's probably like he's a better passer coming out of college than Lamar. I think that's pretty evident with Jaden Daniels. He's just a smaller guy, so can he stand up and take those hits in the NFL level?
I would say that there's a little case of prospect fatigue with Drake May. I don't think there's anything that he's done that's made him lose spots. It's more that other players have done more in this process to move up.
And that's where you lose me. Because I am so sick and tired of this process. I went to and I looked at his RAS score. I watched him at Pro Day. He threw the ball well, and that's where these NFL teams they get themselves in this psychological warfare. You get to watch these guys play a lot of football. They get to go play on a real field with 11 players on each side. The games mean something, and you can actually watch them play the game against relatively pretty good competition, and then you can judge for yourself off of that. But then we find ourselves in a position where, again, the guy, he rolled out on Pro Day, he threw the ball 900 yards. Who was the kid? Jamarcus Russell. Russell was unbelievable at Pro Day. He threw the ball from 1 foot and 1 leg from the back of the end zone all the way through the uprights. You should have seen it. You should have been there.
Let's be very clear on why Jaden Daniels is now believed to go over Drake May. It's not because of Pro Day. It's because he played very, very well against better competition than Drake May. I mean, Jaden Daniels had one of the best college seasons ever, statistically speaking, in the SEC, while Drake May was inconsistent for the UNC Tar Heels. Like that's why Jaden Daniels is ahead. It's not because Jaden Daniels walked into Pro Day and lit up. Actually, things got worse for Jaden Daniels after Pro Day. People didn't like his Pro Day. They were like, he's missing guys left and right. But it's because he played the games.
And I think you're proving my point, is that he was looked upon less now after Pro Day.
Well, I mean, he was still going number 2 behind the certified number 1 prospect.
Well, I'm saying we'll see how much value they actually put in the pro day or not the pro day. All right.
But you have one final prediction. Who do you want the Bengals to get, Trace? As a non-Bengals fan,
As a non-Bengals fan, I would love for them to either get selfishly. I would love for them to get Brock Bowers. Yes, I would love for that. I would love for that. A Georgia Bulldog. I also I'd be happy to see him get Ladd McConkey. The only thing I don't want to have happen, which I'll tease this, I guess this is a tease on the radio.
Oh.
Kenner and Kev are next. But if you get a chance throughout your day, we have this cool thing called YouTube. You can go to it. You can go to Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, and you can listen to the rest of this NFL talk in this NFL segment as we do this. But unfortunately, we're out of time. The clock man is saying we're out of time. You enjoy Kenner and Kev next on 1410 Wing AM. We're going to continue our conversation on our YouTube channel. You're more than welcome to join us. But so long in the Miami Valley. We love you. 1410 Wing AM. All right, we're back. Listen, you know what's funny is like some people were worried about the let's cut the segment. I think I seen Craig in the chat real quick said let's cut the segment of where you burn 2 minutes of the segment for the radio. That's their problem, brother, not ours. All right, I mean that's their problem. If they want to listen to the rest of the segment, they can find a way to come back. No problem. All right. But my point, I think what you were saying was proving my point in a way. It's like, I don't know how much value I'm putting in any of it. I just would rather watch the games in college.
You were saying Drake May lost like Jaden Daniels jumped Drake May because of pro day and all this pro day stuff, and I said no, it's because of what happened on the field. Like Jaden Daniels played against the SEC and put up cartoon numbers against the field against the SEC, while Drake May was inconsistent for UNC. That's I was just going against, and you're not wrong.
No, you're right.
We do this sometimes. That's what's happening with JJ McCarthy is we're skyrocketing him up because of his pro day. He comes in a little more. He comes in a little bigger. You talk to JJ and he seems like a great kid, right? All those things come out.
You ever think these guys are used like puppets sometimes though, like these NFL, like the quarterback specifically, like they get like there's
that's
this
what sells the draft.
But I would even say like there's some teams that I think that they act like they like a certain guy and they're like, I don't know, we might actually trade up or we might want something, and then there's no doubt that there's cards being.
Is Harbaugh doing that with JJ to trade out of that pick? So let me map something out for you, right?
Yeah, you have some scuttlebutt.
Well, I was gonna do something else, but like Caleb Williams goes 1, Jaden Daniels goes 2, Drake May goes 3, Marvin Harrison goes 4, right? Which is probably the most likely scenario. There's a billion scenarios to go, that's probably the most likely. So now the Chargers are sitting with the 5th pick. They really don't need anything. You can get a wide receiver, you can get a tackle, and those things are all great and dandy.
They drafted a wide receiver first round last year. That kid out of Washington.
Or the TCU kid? Is that
TCU, thank you.
Yeah, I don't.
The Jones.
It wasn't very good. Regardless. Now, Jim Harbaugh's been hyping up J.J. McCarthy. He's the number 1 pick overall. And is it all just a ploy so he can trade out of that pick and get 2 first-round picks from the Minnesota Vikings? Is that what's going on? I did hear some scuttlebutt. So this is what we do with the draft. We always talk about we always hype up these draft prospects. We also hype up betting odds. Like all of the rumors that we come from, we just did it in the last segment, comes from, have you seen the betting odds have changed? Have you seen the betting odds? 2 weeks ago, the Chargers were 100-1 to draft a quarterback in the first round. 100-1. Last week it was 50-1. Today it's 5-1.
5-1?
5-1. So the same odds for the Bengals to draft a cornerback. The Chargers are 5-1 to draft a quarterback. And the reason is what if Jim Harbaugh wants to reunite with J.J. McCarthy? He trades Justin Herbert to the Minnesota Vikings for 3 first-round picks. It's crazy. Crazy.
Would that be the worst trade in NFL history?
Well, not until you see it all play out. I would.
The Trey Lance trade's pretty bad.
I don't know. Right off the rip,
the Mitch Trubisky's
you're trading a top 5 quarterback for J.J. McCarthy.
Well, you'd get 3 first-round picks too. So it depends on how you draft those guys.
I guess. I don't know. Could you
I
imagine?
don't know. I've heard a lot of people think that that they think that he's overrated.
Justin Herbert?
That's what I've heard.
I don't think he's over. I think however
Herbert's
few
great.
Chargers fans there are, they say, well, if Justin Herbert had Tyreek Hill, if Justin Herbert had Jamar Chase, this guy would be the best quarterback. And that's what they say. I don't know if overrated's the right word, more than they give him a bunch of excuses.
The Chargers really don't make sense why they haven't been better, because they've got a quarterback that across the board people think is a top 5 quarterback.
They
had 2 of the best pass rushers in the game in Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. They had 2 pretty good wide receivers and a top tier running back. They have a franchise tackle in Rashawn Slater. Like, that team should have won more than they did. But they do play in a division that has a pretty good team in it.
And they got ravaged by injuries too. They're the Reds of the NFL.
We do compare Joe Burrow with Justin Herbert a lot. Like Justin Herbert's been hurt twice too.
Yeah.
Slap that he's injury prone label on him.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I also think it's fair to say that the Chargers look dramatically different without Justin Herbert. So maybe the Chargers fans were onto something when they were suggesting that he was carrying the load. What were you going to say, Casey?
All I was going to say is there's one clear thing that JJ has that Justin Herbert doesn't. If you just listen to what good old Harbaugh has to say about JJ.
Yeah, what's he have to say?
He says that he's got the clutch gene.
Nothing's more symbolic of that than the opening drive of the Alabama game.
Yeah, and then old Herbert, he gives up a 30-point lead to the Jags. He fails to win in an overtime situation with the Raiders to go to the playoffs. I don't know. Maybe there's something to it.
That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard Casey say.
I'm just telling you what he said.
That's bull water.
I'm gonna let that one just go. I'm gonna let that one go. We'll let that one slide.
So what do you think, Trace?
What's
as
that?
someone who hasn't dived a whole lot into
I'm
it,
very casual when it comes to the NFL.
dived in, how do you think it's going to go? Because the first 2 picks are pretty much similar.
I'm only gonna watch the draft to watch it burn, brother. That's all I'm gonna do. I'm gonna watch the draft because I get to watch the Bears select their guy number 1, and I get to hear all the Bears fans like they do every other year. I've heard it for 10, 15, 20 years. They're gonna talk about how they're back and they're great and blah blah blah. They got their guy. They had Justin Fields as their guy. Now they're gonna have Caleb Williams as their guy. So I have to listen to that. But then I am very interested to see what the Vikings do because I do think it's going to be
the Vikings are the wild card, and the Chargers.
I just want to see J.J. McCarthy go to the Vikings. That would be my Super Bowl.
Here's the other big thing, too, is Daniel Jeremiah just tweeted this out not too long ago.
What's that?
He's been making calls to all these GMs, and this is what he had to say. Everyone is planning to move up for an offensive tackle in this draft. So that's the other big thing too. So I guess the Bengals were leaked in that conversation as well.
Oh, really? Well, we do have a little more ammo with an extra third round pick. Trace, you're a pretty big Drake May guy.
I am. I also want to correct Sean in the chat. Usually he's on top of this stuff, but I know he probably forgot. But that's he said that Jim Harbaugh believes so much in J.J. McCarthy that he didn't throw one pass in the second half versus Penn State. Well. Harbaugh wasn't there. Remember that was Marone's coming out crying party, if you don't forget. So maybe it wasn't Harbaugh after all. Harbaugh would have had them think they would have been slinging that puppy all over the field.
And back to the point about you're pretty high on Drake May. You think the Vikings is a terrible spot to land. What if Drake May goes to Minnesota?
I wouldn't be happy about that. No.
I was gonna say because. Also, your take that the Vikings stink, like that's a really good spot for a young quarterback to go.
You keep saying that, but I do think the Vikings stink because there's more to a team than just the quarterback.
Todd McShay.
That's the point. Is they've got tall Sean McVay and Kevin O'Connell. They've got the best wide receiver in the league. They've got a pretty good 2 in Jordan Addison. They've got a really good tight end in T.J. Hockenson. They've got a pretty good offensive line.
Todd McShay came out. Draft expert Todd McShay said that the Vikings were the best. And we think that he copied Reed on that.
Yeah, some are saying. Probably watches the show.
Did we give the super chats out, Casey? I don't know if we did that.
No.
Commanders is a good spot to go to.
Where?
Commanders.
Yeah, Commanders. So we have Chi-Town Real Estate. Reed is afraid to arm wrestle. That was $2. Are you afraid?
I'll arm wrestle you right now, Adam. Right now.
So if Chi-Town comes up to, or comes down, I guess, to Hamilton, and he wants to arm wrestle, he can feel free to do that. RM, $2 super chat as well. My contribution towards an Elly De La Cruz extension.
Love that.
Dude, I do think that should be implemented. I do think fans should be allowed to Venmo owners.
I think that I've always thought that it would be
Isn't
cool
that-
to have a remember that take that I had a long time ago when I was a kid. I used to think like it'd be cool to have like a some kind of fan group that you could actually invest the money and then you get to vote on who you extend, etc. But then
That would be
ultimately would never work.
That would be hilarious because now we are getting to a part of society where like we're saying no to them building new stadiums. But we're like, yeah, we don't want a new stadium anymore, but like we really want Elly De La Cruz for like the next 10 years. So like, can we make that happen? Put that on the ballot.
Actually, it's the same concept if you think about it.
It's the exact same concept. It's like we're saying no to stadiums, yes to players.
That's right. Well, we want.
Which is funny. Like
they'll bring people down to the ballpark. It's gonna do a lot for our income.
Kansas City said no to both the renovations of Arrowhead and the new Royal Stadium, but I guarantee if they put on the ballot like, hey, this is a pay increase for Bobby Witt and Patrick Mahomes, it would pass with flying colors. They're like, yeah, let's do that one.
Michael Rolfe says he is the Chatterbox Reds NIL.
Yeah, he is. I like that. He's also a man that wins Christmas light shows.
He does.
Neighborhood. Yeah, you didn't know.
Is that right?
That isn't a suggestion. That's a fact.
He won his neighborhood light show?
I think he's like a running champion. Some are saying he's a dynasty. Just thought.
I got to go see it.
Yeah.
You got that address, Mike? I'll go check it out.
Yeah, don't do that, Michael. Do not give Elliot your address.
During Christmas time, of course. Yeah.
What, you're gonna say something?
No, well, I was just gonna say. I was gonna say I think the Bengals are gonna trade back.
I'm cool. I'm literally cool with whatever the Bengals do.
I know you are. I know you are, Homer.
Well, like, if they trade back and get more picks in the top 100, sure. The only thing that I can't wrap my head around. There's this rumor going around that they draft Jared Verse, and it's like I get that he might be a free. I don't know. It's just another edge rusher. It's like, come on, again. We're doing this again. We've already got 3 starters.
Is Miles Murphy going to make a big leap forward this year? Yes or no?
He looked pretty good at the back end of the year.
I'm going to say yes.
He's going to play a lot. He's going to play a lot more. He didn't get a chance to play at the beginning of the season last year.
Casey?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he'll split time with Hubbard.
Well, that didn't answer his question at all.
He'll play more.
Yeah, he'll play more. I mean, that's
still didn't. The question wasn't whether he'll play more.
No, it was to take a leap forward.
Leap forward.
That was the question. I don't know.
He'll take a step forward if he plays more.
I sure hope he takes a leap forward. Otherwise, that's another swing and a miss.
So that sounds like a no.
All right, Trey.
I'm taking that as a no. I gave him 2 chances to answer the question.
Yeah.
Neither time did he take the liberty or the opportunity to say, yes, I think he's going to take a leap forward. I believe in him. He did not do it. That means that he wants to be positive. He wants to be optimistic, but he doesn't want to say what he actually really feels about Miles Murphy, and that's a good thing. That's a good trait to have.
That's not what it means.
Casey, has Alex ever walked down the steps and say, hey, do you think this outfit looks nice? And you say. Yeah. You hesitate and you're like, yeah, it looks nice, but that's the answer you're giving right now for Miles Murphy.
That is the exact answer.
That's not the exact answer I'm giving. I just haven't seen enough from Miles Murphy to say one way or the other.
Could you imagine?
So are you one of those guys that you basically need to see you need to see him sack the quarterback 12 times before you're going to jump on board, or what?
I need to see more than 300 snaps from a guy before I make a.
So he's not.
All right, fun little thing before we leave. We have 1 minute. I'm going to leave it for the Bengals fans in the room. Well, I'm going to sit this one out. You can have another question too, but ready?
Okay.
Your most pleasant surprise of the NFL draft, that when you were watching the draft, you just didn't think much of it, and he ended up being a pretty sizable good player. You can't use Joe Burrow because everybody was excited about him. And then maybe the biggest disappointment, if you have that.
Without a doubt, the biggest disappointment is this is crazy, Billy Price, because I just saw this graphic yesterday about first round picks by position percentages of hits from 2000 to 2019, 20-year span. There was 32 centers taken in the first round. 31 of them hit. Oh. The Bengals were the only miss. The biggest surprise. You know what? Here's one. We were laughed at when we drafted Evan McPherson. Yeah. Because at that point you didn't draft kickers or punters. And Bengals drafted Evan in the 5th or early 6th or something like that. And everyone's like, "What are you doing drafting a kicker?" And in year one, he had some pretty good,
Fantastic player.
Yeah.
John Ross is the biggest bust I've ever seen. I mean, that flame burned so bright, and then it just somebody dumped water all over it, and you never saw him again. John Ross is my biggest disappointment. My biggest surprise. I don't know if I ever thought T. Higgins would be as good as he was. T. Higgins was pretty damn good. I'm gonna go T.
Good
Higgins.
answers.
I'm gonna go T. Higgins.
Casey?
I'm just looking back at all the different drafts that I've watched.
Logan Wilson was a
been paying
delight.
attention to. I think I'm gonna go with my biggest disappointment was probably the one that you just said, John Ross. I think that was probably my biggest disappointment, just because of who was there available to the Bengals. That was the same draft as Patrick Mahomes. Not that I want Patrick Mahomes.
Patrick Mahomes
now,
was drafted
but
right next.
Yeah, he was drafted right after that. So, yeah, I mean that's a pretty big disappointment.
I mean, 8 guys.
Not that I wanted. You said audibly out loud. Not that I would have wanted Patrick Mahomes.
But
I probably wouldn't have.
Well, that's what's funny. Whenever you, for some reason, just throw the Achilles Smith stray out there, as if I care what the Bengals were doing when I was 3 years old. It's all those roads led to getting Joe Burrow, so that's happy.
The other, I'm gonna give out a really, really random pick here. I thought Auden Tate, although he was a role player, he only played for the Bengals for like 4 years. I thought he was really good. For what his role was, and I thought, he was a 7th-round pick, and he was like our 4th-string receiver, 3rd-string receiver. He did pretty decent.
Fair enough. All right, each and every single day, you guys tune in here. You guys are the rock, the solid, the foundation of this show. We appreciate you. We love you. Hopefully, we can keep you entertained. What do you want to say?
I was going to give you a chance to win your $1,000 back, to where you pick your top 10.
Love it.
You pick your top 10. So I'll give you a second. I'll buy some time.
Yeah,
for you
you
to
buy
pull
some
up
time.
Whatever mock draft you want to do.
You got it. You got me.
Or at least, so where I'll let you counteract that. If you get it all right, you get to keep it. You get to keep it.
I like that. I actually love that.
So I'll give you an opportunity to do this. All right. All
Yep.
right, you tell me when you're ready, and I'll start making the draft noises, and we got to do this.
Ready?
All right. Doon, 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 doon. With the first overall pick in the draft, the Chicago Bears select
Caleb Williams.
All right. Doon, 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 doon. With the second overall pick, the Washington Commanders select
Drake May.
You already lost. Doon, 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 doon. New England Patriots select with the third overall pick.
Jaden Daniels.
All right. Arizona Cardinals with the fourth overall pick.
Marvin Harrison Jr.
The Los Angeles with the fifth overall pick, the Los Angeles Chargers. You know you want to do it.
This is impossible. By the way, is it the Chargers or
It's the Chargers.
Chargers?
You know you want to pick them. Starts with a J. Ends with J.
Not
McCarthy.
doing that. I don't even know these kids' names. That's how bad I am.
He is the leading odds.
This kid was a stud, though. I
for
watched him play.
DraftKings, by the way.
I'll take Rome.
Oh, you think they get a wide receiver?
Yes. What's his
Odunze.
name?
They do not trade. They do not
Odunze?
trade out of that.
Odunze.
They do not trade.
Listen, I'm not going to get this right because someone's going to trade, but whatever. Let's do it.
All right, with the sixth pick, the New York Giants select.
It's probably going to be Joe Alt or Malik Neighbors. Those are
No.
two blue chip guys. Maybe they go JJ here because they're a miserable franchise.
Yeah, they
need a
could.
quarterback.
I'm
They
gonna
do need a
go with. I'm gonna go with Byron Murphy.
Oh,
Am I allowed to say Auden Tate sucked, Casey?
He was a seventh-round pick,
it was a
dude.
7th-round pick.
With the seventh overall pick,
Yep.
the Tennessee Titans
terrible.
select.
Joe Alt.
That's a good one.
He eclipsed 100
With the
yards
eighth overall
twice.
pick, the Atlanta Falcons select.
That's a 4th-string receiver. 5th-string receiver.
These numbers look like he's a 9th-string receiver. He had 2 touchdowns.
9th pick, right? Is that what we're
Eighth.
doing?
Eighth.
8th pick. I gotta get 2 more of these right.
He didn't even play.
J.C. Latham.
Okay, with the 9th pick, the Chicago Bears select.
They are going to take
Played 30
Malik
games.
Nate- have you
Neighbors.
I was going to say, if Malik Neighbors
he's out
got
of
to
the league.
9, that's anything. The 10th pick, the Jets select.
The Jets. They need a quarterback. Is this where they take him?
They take JJ.
I can't do it, man. I can't believe a franchise is that stupid.
Well, JJ probably ain't making it to the 10th pick, but
I'm not doing that. I'm not picking. JJ's not good. I'm not putting who is it again? Jets?
Jets. Do they get a weapon?
Brock
for-
Bowers.
Yes, Jets.
All right.
Jets.
All right, well, that was a bad one.
Are you standing by?
So,
That was a bad one.
yeah.
Are you
No
standing by
trades in the top 10 picks?
No, I'm not doing trades. I don't know enough about the league to know trades. I'm just gonna. First of all, I don't even need. Let's be
You're
clear.
trying to predict what's going to happen.
That
not
is
what you
true,
do.
and I'm openly admitting to everybody I don't know what's going to happen, and neither do you. Which is why we're all going to tune in on Thursday. We're going to find out. Which is what? That is tomorrow, and that is when we will see you next. Tomorrow.
Jay Morrison joining
Off
us
the
tomorrow.
bench. Jay Morrison, breaking news, joining us tomorrow. We'll see you. Love your day. I hope you have a fun one. Off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Take care, everybody.